And the pledge, we'd all stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dean, if you'll come to the microphone and tell us what brings you here tonight. And you're not being picked. Don't not do this to all the Boy Scouts.
Okay. I'm here for my communications merit badge to listen and take notes on the council meeting tonight.
Well, welcome here. Councilman Orleans and Councilman DiPolito were Life Scouts, and Councilman Price is a mother of an Eagle Scout. And my brother and I were Eagle Scouts. So it's you're in questionable but good company. Good to have you here tonight.
Thank you.
I'd like to invite the ham radio operators to come forward while I read a proclamation for them, which is our pleasure to do every year. And as someone who is studying communications, you need to interview these guys before you leave, because these are the experts in communication long distance, the original communication long distance. Amateur Radio Week. Whereas amateur radio operators are celebrating over a century of human voice broadcast over the airwaves, and amateur radio continues to provide a bridge among societies and countries, creating friendship and sharing ideas. And whereas the North Fulton Amateur Radio League members have provided countless hours of uncompensated community service by providing backup communication services to the City of Roswell, police and fire departments, communication to local charitable events, and other organizations throughout the region. And whereas the City of Roswell recognizes and appreciates the diligence of these hams, who also serve as weather spotters in the Skywarn program of the National Weather Service and provide relevance in our highly modern technical world by providing emergency communications when other systems may fail. And whereas the North Fulton Amateur Radio League will participate in a yearly national event sponsored by the AARRL, which I assume is for the Amateur Radio League,
American
Radio League, called Field Day, as an emergency preparedness exercise that will take place on June 22nd and June 23rd at the Waller Park Extension. This event will demonstrate amateur radio skills and readiness to provide self-supporting communications without further infrastructure being required. And that means not even electric power. Now, therefore, I, Jerry Wood, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby proclaim the week of June 22nd and 23rd, the weekend of June 22nd and 23rd, as Amateur Radio Weekend in the City of Roswell, Georgia, and urge all of our citizens to attend the Field Day and recognize the importance of this event and the significance of amateur radio to our citizens and our community. And with that, I'd like someone to tell us more about the weekend of this and what folks can expect to see if they come to Waller Park Extension.
Good evening, Mayor Wood. My name is Scott Straw. I am the chairman of the Field Day Planning Committee for the North Fulton Amateur Radio League. As you have so eloquently stated, this is going to be a major event for us. It will be occurring the weekend of the 22nd and the 23rd at Waller Park Extension, 160 Dobbs Drive here in the City of Roswell. At this event, which is the climax of the week-long Amateur Radio Week that's sponsored by the American Radio Relay League, that's what the ARRL is, we will be only using emergency power to operate 6 unique stations and contact other amateur radio stations across North America, the Pacific, and we may even have a few European contacts. Primarily our focus is on North America and the U.S. possessions in the Pacific. We will be operating for 24 hours straight beginning at 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon. Our slogan, "When all else fails, ham radio works," is more than just words to us, as we prove we can send messages in many forms without the use of phone systems, internet, or any other infrastructure that can be compromised in a time of crisis. Last year, more than 35,000 amateur radio operators across North America, from Bangor, Maine, to Honolulu, Hawaii, to Yellowknife, Yukon Territory, to San Juan, Puerto Rico, participated. And we look forward to having you stop by, and we would like to extend to you a personal invitation that Mr. Jim Payne, known to many of you as former Alpharetta Councilman Jim Payne, but known to us as N4SEC Jim Payne, will present to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I understand there's a competition every year.
Yes, sir. With the Gwinnett Amateur Radio Society, we have a friendly competition. We've actually begun to call it the Good Humor Competition because the prize is the delivery of ice cream by the loser to the winner. And I proudly tell you that for as long as we've been keeping track, the North Fulton Amateur Radio League has been victorious in this competition.
Well, let's have a hand for the North Fulton Amateur Radio League. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Y'all are excused, and you may get back to your radios. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilmember Eichelhardt. Do I have a second? That is a second by Councilmember DePolito. Does anyone in the audience have any questions regarding the consent agenda? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. For the record, Councilmember Wynn is absent with an excuse tonight. I have a nomination for the Cultural Arts Board appointment, Sandra Moffett. Do I have a motion to approve that appointment? Motion to approve by Councilman Eichelhardt. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Orlins. All in favor of that motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time I'll call upon the Department Councilmember Nancy Diamond.
Thank you, sir. This item is approval of an ordinance to amend the boundaries of the Historic Properties Overlay District as part of the official zoning map of the City of Roswell, TA 1301. This will be the second reading, and Brad Townsend is here with a new presentation. Thank you.
This was added, right? Oh, I skipped it. Oh, wait a minute. Before we go on, I skipped something. We want to recognize Joan Triano. Joan, if you'll come forward. I apologize. That was on a different sheet of paper. And I wasn't well prepared, but that's not the first time. And is someone going to hear and tell us all about what Joan has done? I've got it a little bit here, but I cannot really do her justice. Jerry Orlins, are you going to do the honors?
You want me to?
Councilman Orlins has nominated you to do the honors.
Thank you. I'm Betty Prescott, and I'm president of the Roswell Ramblers organization. Joan has been an active volunteer for the Adult Recreation Center for 13 years. She's a retired IBM employee. She applied for an IBM grant through the Friends of Roswell Parks and received a $3,000 grant.
Let's have one more hand for that. I love that. Love that grant application.
To go towards a cultural diverse program for the Roswell Ramblers. IBM was so impressed with Joan and her volunteer spirit and service that they nominated her for recognition by President Barack Obama through the President's Volunteer Service Award Program. And we, as president of the Roswell Ramblers, I want to be first to congratulate Joan on this honor.
Joan, congratulations. Come to the microphone.
Come on here.
Tell us how you came up with this idea.
I know that IBM always offered grants for X amount of time that you volunteer, and I didn't quite know how to go about it, but I just decided I was going to jump in, even if I didn't know if I could swim or not. But I am very blessed to be part of the Roswell Ramblers, and they're my family, and I couldn't do half of what I do if it wasn't for my friends, who I call friends and angels, because I don't drive, so they're really the conduit taking me where I have to go to do the volunteering, and I'm so blessed, and I'm so happy that I was able to do this.
Well, we're blessed to have you as a resident of Roswell, and we appreciate your spirit, and you're willing to get in there, dive in without knowing you could accomplish this, but I think you're a great example for all of our citizens, young and old, of what you can achieve when you have no limitations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. One more hand for Joan. Thank you. Oh, the council wants their photo with Joan. Let's go, council. Let's get our photo with Joan. We'd like the whole family to come forward to get this photograph made. Come forward.
Yeah, I'll take some pictures. Oh, no problem. Okay, and if you can look over here. 1, 2, 3. Great, we'll take one more. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
If you can give me your email, I can send you this. Jim Rummel at roswell.com. Oh, I'm Mary. Oh, hi. I'm the recreation department.
That's okay. This is an historic boundary change for the locations of 79, 83, and 85 Webb Street. This is the second reading of a proposed ordinance that would change the boundaries for this location. This has been approved by the Historic Preservation Commission, also been reviewed by the Georgia State Historic Preservation Commission, which supports the change. This is the second reading for this application. This is the smaller 3 lots located in the current boundary. The boundary is in the blue of the current historic district. This is a blow-up location. The 3 parcels would be included in the historic boundary. They are currently not in the boundary. This is an aerial photograph showing the location along Webb Street of the application for the expansion. This is the second reading. Staff recommends approval of this ordinance to amend the boundaries to include these parcels in the historic preservation. If you have any questions.
Does the council have any questions? Council? Is the applicant here tonight?
They are here.
Brendan Walsh, 515 Canton Walk, Roswell, Georgia. We were in here, let me kind of walk you through the story and what we have here. We met with you guys May 13th, about a month ago, and at that time it was really bringing 3 additional properties into the historic district. You know, what we kind of realized at that last meeting was this was more than that. This was a little bit of more of a rezoning hearing, considering the future development that was going to be behind bringing these 3 parcels into the historic district. So after that meeting and hearing your guys' comments and then hearing the public comments as well, we realized that we really need to walk you guys through the story of how we got to this point and how we would like to progress from this point. So I've prepared a little presentation to give some background on myself, my company, how we got to this point, and to answer any questions that maybe we couldn't answer last time to the commissioners and then also to the public as well. Like I said, my name is Brendan Walsh. I live right here in historic Roswell. My company's name is Lehigh Homes. It's a company I started in 2009. It started really with my development, Providence and Historic Roswell. We are a family business that operates right here out of historic Roswell. What we focus on is home building and development in walkable, urban-type areas, and also areas that give us the ability to create unique architecture. We like to do things that are, special in spaces. What kind of our company motto is, we kind of have three things that we need to do as a company. One is make money, which is important. To sustain a business, you need to make money. Two is to, leave the place that you're developing or that you're building on more beautiful than when it started. Sometimes that can be easy when you're, building in a landfill or something like that. Other times it can be difficult when you're building in nature. So we always try to keep that in mind. And then third is we always try to conserve resources when we're building. Part of those resources are the way that we build on the land or the material we use in the homes. But we always try to keep those three things in mind. Lehigh Homes' kind of flagship project, like I mentioned, is Providence and Historic Roswell. We purchased that property in 2009 from a bank. It was zoned and approved for 41 units at the time, and it was sitting vacant for quite some time. Like I mentioned, how we like to create special spaces. One of the first things we did is decreased the amount of units that we were able to build in there. Part of that, what that did is gave us opportunities to do what we like to call pocket parks, create unique green areas in those extra spaces that add to the community. We sold out in 2011 at a time when the real estate market was very tough, but with the success of Historic Roswell, with the team we surrounded ourselves with, our local architect, local engineers, it really made the project a success. One of the issues that we had with the project, though, was we were a little bit limited when we bought the project. Streets, utilities, curbs, gutters, all those type of things were in. So, we couldn't do exactly what we wanted, but we really focused on, designing the spaces where they fit in with the land or they fit in with the corners and the turns that you make, so everything kind of flows in together. And I think that's what helped us to be successful. And you see a little bit of that here. When I said, kind of tied into some of the development, we had to do all front entry garages here, not something that I like to do, but kind of forced into it. But, we make sure to design those, what we like to call in the business, end grains. When you come around a corner, you see the end of a building, or you're looking down a straightaway and you see something, what you see there is very important to how it ties into the rest of the community. And I think we did that well, and I think the architect did that well in our previous project. With the success we had with Providence and Historic Roswell, we wanted to continue that success. And what we did is we reached out to a few different designers. And like I mentioned, the real estate market has been a little turbulent here the last 3 or 4 years, and so we had the opportunity where we kind of created a design competition. We had 3 of what I consider, the best planners in Atlanta, maybe in the southeast or even the country, take a stab at laying out a community on Webb Street. And what we were able to do is, since they didn't have a lot of work out there, they all jumped at it and took that opportunity. And so we were able to look at a lot of iterations of plans and really focus on what we wanted and what would make the community special. Our criteria for designing the community was we wanted that new urbanism feel. We wanted more of that front porch living instead of the back porch living. We wanted to feel more like a community where you know your neighbor, you socialize in the front of your home instead of the rear of the home. We wanted to mix single-family homes with our existing townhome product. What we didn't want to create was what I like to call a sea of townhouses. We didn't want all townhouses in it to be stagnant. We want those homes kind of mixed in together. And then we also wanted to incorporate the heritage of the street. There's a lot of history that's back there, and I've learned a lot of history in really the last 8 to 12 months, and how that community started back there, and who's there now, and how we can continue to honor that heritage and honor that history as we continue to move forward. I think really when we're trying to create this community, I think the feel that we would really love is what they have down at Vickery Creek in the Mill Village. They do a great job of homes and townhouses and tight spaces together down there. We're very fortunate to have that community here in Roswell. I think it's one of the top communities in Roswell, and really one of the top communities in all of Atlanta. So when we look for inspiration, that would be something that we would love for our project to turn out as successful as that has down there. When we went through this design competition, we created all these plans. We finally settled on one, and then we brought it to city staff. And when we brought it to city staff, this is the first thing, little hiccup of what we learned about what we were wanting to do back there is the zoning that's currently back there is very, a little bit confusing, might be the right word. You've got a mix of R2 zoning, R3 zoning, historical zoning, some R2 that's in the district, some that's out of the district, and so it was something that was going to be a little bit tough to overcome. And so working through it with city staff, their recommendation was to accomplish what we wanted to do was to bring all of these properties into the historic district. And after we got that recommendation from staff, we reached out to the current residents that are on Webb Street, and I think it was about probably 14 months ago, last April, we met with the residents on Webb Street, kind of showed them what our plan was, what we're going to be doing back there, what we'd like to do. And one of the options we discussed with them was not bringing our 3 parcels, 85, 83, and 79, but bringing all of the parcels back there into the historic district at once. It quickly became evident that the residents weren't ready for that. They weren't ready for that change. Some residents were, wanting to sell to us, other residents were wanting us to do the project, and some residents just didn't want any change at all, which is something I completely respect. I grew up in a home with my parents, and I wouldn't want their home to change, but sometimes things do. So I respect people that don't want to change, but we had a lot of people that encouraged what we were doing back there. But we decided we didn't want to take that step and force people that didn't want to be in the historic district to do that. So we kind of broke it down and just doing R3 parcels now. Which led us to what our kind of development is now. And as you look here, the way we designed this development was to create a development that could stand alone on its own if the rest of Webb Street is not developed, but also a development that can tie in with future development on Webb Street. So kind of knocking out 2 birds with 1 stone there, and designing something that's great by itself, but then also tying great to the rest of the community. And what... Yep.
Now, rather than trying to expand this for district, now we're asking for our...
No.
Okay, I'm glad I asked that question because somehow I was still asking to expand this.
Please turn on your microphone.
The point was, I thought I heard you say we're now asking for R3 zoning, but I misunderstood that.
I think I said
I'm glad asked that question.
there's a mix of R2, R3, and historic back there.
Well, for current zoning.
He's representing what exists today is such a mix that it doesn't make any...
All right.
The development parameters are so convoluted.
But
So he's trying to
what you
clarify.
are asking for today is the historic district expansion. I apologize. I thought I heard that, and I was confused, and I'm glad you straightened me out. Thank you.
And so what we did is we were able to create a really special community by bringing those 3 parcels into the historic district. And as you can see here, we've got a mix of it shows 13, but it's really 3 of those aren't ours. That's another builder. But 10 of our townhouses and 6 single-family homes. And like I said, there are existing homes that are back there on Webb Street. So that's something we took into mind is how we want to design this to fit in with the homes that are going to stay there, or if homes just decide to sell as well. So it's something that we take a lot of pride in. We think that this plan is really something special and something that we're able to do in this plan that we weren't able to do in our previous development is, like I mentioned, rear entry garages here where you're putting those vehicles in the back. It's going to give your front elevations a very special look. Something else, like I mentioned, your end grains. As you're coming around Webb Street, if you're coming from Canton, we made sure there are kind of focal points there of what you're going to see is going to be something that's very appealing to the eye. And we feel like this development does that. And to do that, we need to bring these 3 parcels into the historic district. Any questions? One, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is already part of the historic district.
1, 2, 3, 5 are in the historic.
Correct. 6 through 12 and 16, 17, 18, and 19 are the 3 that we'd like to bring in.
And 15
is already in, yes.
Please turn on your microphone.
I apologize. I think you clarified what the lots were in the historic district already and which ones are being brought in.
Correct.
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember Price, I'm glad you're not as confused as I am. or was.
My microphone is on. Just a question about how this fits into the comprehensive plan and some of the proposed changes in the UDC. Is there any demarcation here that will be impacted? I guess that's more of a question for staff.
The Unified Development Code has all of this area consistently zoned downtown residential.
The whole thing?
Yes,
So no changes with respect to what we're looking at?
correct. So it clarifies from the existing R3, R2, and historic, it makes it all downtown residential.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh, you mentioned the sight lines are very important, I agree with you, and the view of the houses from the street. I think townhouses 3, 6, and 10 particularly are important as it concerns the residents across the street. Can you describe what the ends of those units would look like generally?
Yeah,
Do you have elevations? by chance?
we don't have any elevations at this point. I mean, I think what you can expect is similar to what you see here. The topo of 10 or 3 through 10 is falling. If you start up at 10, it falls towards where it says pavilion up there. It falls that way. So you're going to have basement scenarios on the buildings of 3, 6, and 10. And so generally speaking, 2 levels will be out of the ground, 1 level will be in the ground. So from a street view perspective, if you're looking at it, it's going to appear to be a 2-story structure, and then when you come around the backside, that you would have the walkout basement scenario.
Okay, so there would be fenestration on the ends of those buildings, and they would be...
Yes, and that's
Fairly
something that, is important to us. Like I said, that end grain is really, not to criticize other builders, but you see a lot of other production-style builders that an end unit looks like an interior unit that was just sliced and put on the end. That's something we focus on with our architects, is making sure those end units tie into specifically where they sit on the elevations. And that's kind of what we did in Providence, is making sure it's not a cookie-cutter type situation where you've got an end unit that's actually designed with the lay of the land there as well.
I think that's critically important for this. And a question for staff, is that something... Can we condition that as part of this, or this is just, it's either in the historic district or it's not?
I think that's one of the purposes of staff recommending it go into the historic district, because then those end units and those townhouse units will be reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission to determine the architecture fitting into the historic district.
So we would not address that here, that would get addressed later at HPC?
HPC, correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure who I'm addressing this to, because the staff that I talked to earlier are not here, but maybe Brad, you can address what kind of requirements would be put in place for what kind of review and such for the street. We've heard a lot about the street being an issue right now.
If approved and placed in the historic district, the subsequent processes the city would be requiring is a review by the Historic Preservation Commission. At that time, there would be an analysis related to the infrastructure needs for them to develop that. They would then have to have a land disturbance permit for those infrastructure needs, be it sidewalks. They're showing some on-street parking, so that has to be reviewed and approved by Transportation and Public Works Environmental. Has been a preliminary review related to improvements to water lines to make sure that fire flow is maintained for this location, so there would be some upgrade to that. They would then, with the LDP, we're dealing with a preliminary plat requirement, a building permit, and then a final plat for them to be able to subdivide the townhomes and the single-family lots and I believe 16 through 19 is actually a condominium association, so that would have to also be recorded prior to them being able to sell off that.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend, you just made me think of another question. With respect to the condominium association, would these townhouse units be considered part of the Providence development?
Correct. Part of that HOA.
Okay. And what about the single-family houses?
Same as well, just a little different structure, but be included in that HOA.
Okay. But they would share the common amenities
Yes.
and so forth?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions for the applicant or the staff before I open it up to the public hearing? Thank you. You'll have an opportunity to follow the public comment. This time, if you have questions or comments from the public, I'll recognize you. Just come forward. There is a 5-minute time limit.
My name is Katie Ballou, 905 Camp Avenue in Roswell. I'm a resident of the Providence Brownstone community, and I'm here just to talk in favor of this expansion of our community. I will tell you that everything that Brendan Walsh has said in terms of Lehigh Homes being sensitive to the aesthetics of a community is well proven in our neighborhood. There is the parks, the pocket parks that he talked about. And I am also a real estate agent, and I work with a lot of residents of Roswell and people coming into the area, and I will tell you that there is a high demand for this type of housing in our community. Just the success of Providence itself is a testament to that. It was one of the first projects I had ever experienced where there was no model. And people just bought the townhome based on concept and what was being built. I recently worked with another couple. We actually ended up looking at a project in Vinings that I would say was loosely tried to model after Providence, but the density was offensive, actually. They just went 4 stories over on everything. There was no passive parks, and my client made the comment that she felt like she was in a concrete canyon. And Providence is just the exact opposite of that in terms of working with a higher density project, but really preserving green space around it and being sensitive to the surrounding community. So basically, I'm just saying that there is a demand for this housing. I do have other agents and colleagues of mine calling all the time wondering when they're going to release these lots and when they can come in and try to get an opportunity to learn more about it. So I'm hoping that the council will approve the project and that we can continue to expand the great community we have now.
Does anyone else wish to speak? If so, come forward.
Hi, my name is Evelyn Anderson. I'm the daughter of Mildred Blake, who resides at 78 Webb Street.
Could you, for the benefit of the audience and the council, can you point out which one is 78 Webb Street on this plat? Maybe Clyde could point it out for us. Brad?
Is that it?
Brad.
That right on the corner?
That would be 78 south of 19 and 18.
Is that it?
It is.
No, that's the other. This one? That's it. This one.
Okay, they're on the corner.
Okay.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay. My sister and I gave Brandon Walsh of Lehigh Homes our phone numbers on May 13th. We knew our mother was not interested in selling her property, but we decided we would talk to her to see if she wanted to meet with Brandon and Mike to review Lehigh Homes. Our mother, Mildred Blake, She's not interested, in selling her property. But she wanted me to read this letter that she gave to me. She said, "Dear Mr. Walsh, I am Mildred Blake of 78 Webb Street, Roswell, Georgia. I am on a walker. Therefore, I have asked my daughters to speak on my behalf. I understand the contents of the letter you sent me. I do not have any questions or comments. I do not want to have a meeting because I am not interested in selling my property. Sincerely, Mildred Blake." And this is my last comments. I've lived in Roswell all my life. I was born and raised in that house that you want to come in and put this in. My mom...
Which house did you live in?
78 Webb Street.
Right. So you live across the street from the property they wish to develop?
Yes.
Thank you.
For over 59 years.
Correct. Thank you.
I was born and raised in that house. I've stayed in Roswell all my life. But this is just, I know development is coming, but, as far as us, she's not interested in selling. But, this is just to Lehigh Homes. To me, Lehigh Homes is looking, out as an investment to make money. I understand that. The people on West Street are looking to hold on to their property. It is their heritage, their legacy, their pride and joy. My grandfather worked hard to obtain that land in Roswell, a black man. So, you can't replace, that was his heritage. He had a hard time getting that piece of property, and we're not ready to relinquish it.
I don't think that that's the decision tonight to ask you to relinquish that property.
No, well, she's not going to, and we're going to do everything.
And the city is not asking her to sell her property.
Well, you didn't hear the comment when they talked to us, and I don't think he not him, but I think his father, he didn't mean to say it, but he told us, he said, we'll take the property. And
no one is going to take your property.
No, as long as I'm living, nobody's going to take.
And this
the property.
city would not support the law. The laws of the land will not allow him to take the property.
Okay. Well, that was a comment that was made.
Well, I will assure you that is not the decision being made tonight.
Okay. Okay.
And I assure you that the laws would not. Mr. Halsey can assure you that for private development there could be no taking of that property.
All right. Okay.
And you can bank on that.
Okay. I'm going to hold you to that.
You can hold me to that because that is the law of the land.
Okay. I'm going to hold you to it, and I got these audience and all these people to back me up.
I will back that up, and Mr. Halsey will back me up on that.
All right. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sandra Taylor, and I am the daughter of Mildred Blake. Let's think about the change of injustice and equality. Black people have been bound by chains of injustice for centuries. Picture African warriors in the jungle with green grass and trees as far as the eye can see. With spears in hand, the warriors are hunting for food for their families, and black women are by the river washing clothes for their families. Suddenly, white hunters grab men and women and load hundreds into ships not fit for animals, shackled for weeks with very little food, water, or movement. These conditions were inhumane. People, yes, I said people, black people with emotions and feelings just like you, bound by chains of injustice. Slaves claimed as property for generations. Were you responsible for what happened back then? No. Was there anything you could do about this past injustice? No. This was before your time. For years, and yes, even today, black people have been scorned, prosecuted, beaten, discriminated against, and even killed. Is it justice when a white man wants something a black person owns? Lehigh Homes wants my mother's property. She owns it, it's hers, and she plans to keep it. Lehigh Home wants her land to build million-dollar homes on. During a break at the meeting on May 13th, Councilman Mike Wash of Lehigh Homes made a statement in the presence of others saying, "We will take your mother's property and build 3 homes." I said, "Take?" Mike had a look on his face like the little boy caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Then he said, "Oh, I mean, buy your mother's property." Yes, Lehigh Homes wants to take our property. Property our ancestors worked their fingers to the bone, shed tears, sweat to acquire. There's an abundance of legacy, heritage, pride, and dignity attached to this land. Can you put a price on legacy? No. Very little at that. What's happened to minorities over the years is a white man or a company wants property black people own. Black people have been manipulated into selling their property, or underhanded tactics are used to get the property by any means necessary. One example would be make the area historical and build million-dollar homes, and some of the black people will not be able to afford the higher tax. I ask that everyone on this council vote not to make any portion of Webb Street historical. Stand up for what's right. Do not let your vote be impacted by your peers. The injustices that happened over the years were not your responsibility. This is. God knows all and sees all. I ask that you break this injustice tonight and vote not to make any portion of Webb Street historical.
Thank you. For the record, I think where they're showing 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, that is already historic on Webb Street. Is that correct? So the council's not voting to do that. That was voted to be done years ago. And again, I will assure you the council is not taking a vote on taking anybody's property today or trying to influence that. I recognize a concern of property values may go up, but I'm not certain that property values haven't already gone up because of improvements in the district. And if this city's goal is to reduce property, is to lower property values by depressing property values, I think that's a self-defeating strategy. Anyone else wish to speak? You're welcome to come forward. Yes, ma'am, you may come forward, and I'll recognize the gentleman who's come up next. You'll give us your name and address.
My name is Gwen Martin, and my family owns property at 56 Webb Street and 64 Webb Street. And
could you show us where those are on this? It would be helpful.
56, 64.
They're off the map?
They're off the map.
If you could
I'm not
show
sure
us.
exactly. They're at the front entrance.
Yeah, I think they're down here.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. I would just like to say that there are a lot of mixed emotions, and that there are a lot of concerns that some of the residents have, but there are also some of the residents who are wanting to sell their property. They are working with Lehigh Homes in order to do that. So there is mixed, I guess, emotions and feelings about selling the property. I attended a meeting. I Never heard anybody say that they were going to take the property. We are speaking with Lehigh Homes to sell the property. So some of my family members have decided to do that. And they have worked with us, and any questions that we had, they have also tried to answer those questions. So on behalf of my family, I would like to say that some of the residents are interested in selling their homes, and we are working with Lehigh Homes.
And again, that's not up for the vote tonight.
Right. It's the historical thing, but...
Well, his decision to either purchase and your decision to sell would be a private matter and not a matter for the city to decide. Yes, sir, you may come forward.
Hello, my name is John Thomas. I live at 360 Green Oak Drive, which is adjacent to the property in question as well. So I've had some experience with Lehigh doing some development.
Is that in the Providence
I actually live in Kenton Street Walk, which was the original development there, which was
adjacent to Providence.
The balance of Providence was originally going to be part of Kenton Street Walk. So I can speak from the experience of having lived there when Lehigh did the development of the Providence community, which is already there. And, other than the inconvenience of having construction happening, I think when the project is said and done, Lehigh does a very nice job of landscaping and overall does works with the adjacent community to the best of their ability in improving the land around them. Most of the property that is going to be developed is either, well, I guess it's pretty much all vacant land now, or may have been homes at one point there at the very end of Webb Street. So I think in the long run, though the property tax may go up because of the increased value for the folks on Webb Street, I think the whole area along the northern end of Webb Street there will be improved by the new development there. And I think having had direct experience with Lehigh, I think they will do an excellent job at completing the project and making it all look very nice. So I support the effort.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Come forward, please.
Janet Russell, 260 Willow Springs Drive. I just have one comment regarding this woman's concerns about her property taxes for her mother. I think that's an issue that should be addressed when you decide what you decide. Oftentimes people who are elderly are fearful of losing the one thing that is a certainty, which is their home. And I think that this council needs to put a provision in that protects the value of the property at today's value so that their taxes don't increase because all these expensive homes are built around them. We're seeing this with the Gullah people in Sapelo Island who are being forced out of their homes since slave times because now Sapelo's becoming a very wealthy resort community and they can't afford the taxes on the land they've lived in for hundreds of years now. So I would like to see this city council show some wisdom for a change and actually take into account not just the tax money you're going to collect from the new development, but from the tax money you won't collect by being sympathetic to those people who really made Roswell what it is, a really nice place to live for all people. The fact that a black man could buy a piece of property in this town 50 or 60 or 70 years ago is pretty phenomenal when you think about it. They couldn't vote. So I think that this city needs to be more than just a tax collector at this point, which is what you're doing with the Fraser Street apartments. I like your idea of green space, sir. On Fraser Street, they're going to stack them and pack them, 320 units on 10 acres. So I would like to see this council make sure that they protect those families that choose not to sell their property so long as the property remains perhaps in the original family's property rights. They did this in California. When my parents died and I inherited their houses, the inheritance was based on the amount that the house was worth when it was sold. I mean, when I inherited it, not when I sold it. so I didn't have to pay the additional income on the difference, because houses in California went from $50,000 to $200,000 and $300,000 overnight. And people that were inheriting homes couldn't afford to pay the taxes on their homes that their parents had been paid for 50 years. So I would suggest that you, before you just go and rush headlong into something, it sounds like an interesting project. I hope it's connected with sidewalks. I would hope that you would protect the people that have given this town the character and the stability that it has. It's not the transients that are moving in because it's trendy. It's those of us that chose to stay here for a long time. Thank you.
Kate, I've got a couple of questions. What of the property taxes which are assessed on property, what's the percentage that's Roswell, and how much is school board in Fulton County?
I don't know what the percentage is, Mr. Mayor. I know that their millage rate, for instance, the school districts is almost 4 times what the city's is. I don't know what of a total tax bill what that breakdown is.
City's about 15% of the total tax bill. So that's all we have control over at the city. And so the first comment is that the city council has no control over the Fulton County School Board taxes or the Fulton County taxes. So we only control a small percentage. And as to grandfathering in folks who grew up in Roswell, I would very much support that with the council. Having grown up in Roswell, if y'all could give me a tax break, I'd also appreciate it. But I think we have to look, we can't just pick and choose who gets tax breaks. As much as I would like to have a tax break, Janet Russell, you are not recognized. You may sit down.
Well, I shouldn't have sat down because I still...
Janet Russell, you may sit back down.
Mayor...
Janet Russell, the rule in this city is you have one opportunity to speak.
You're full of it, Mayor.
Janet, I know that's your opinion.
No, you're taking...
Janet Russell, if you only can keep spinning, you can keep talking, you can keep talking outside.
I know the police officer well. He knows what he's saying is wrong.
Anyway, those are my comments as far as my personally... It has been my efforts to try to maintain and improve property values across the board in Roswell. It's an unfortunate byproduct that taxes go up. And as far as granting tax breaks to seniors, the council could choose to do that. There is a small tax break in the city of Roswell to seniors. As far as old-time residents, as an old-time resident, I would have Personally, I see how that would benefit me, but I don't think that's fair because I think everybody needs to be treated equally. Everybody needs to be treated equally. Anyone else wish to speak? Yes, come forward, please.
Yeah, hello, Eric Schumacher, 145 Prospect Street. A quick question, actually, for clarification with UDC. With the zoning that's coming in this area, would this type of development be allowed with the new zoning?
Brad, could you respond to that?
Yes.
So the density that we're seeing here would be allowed with the new zoning?
Okay.
Okay. So, I don't think we need to do anything here. I mean, I know these gentlemen. I worked with them before on potentially purchasing one of their brownstones behind 9 Kitchen. What I'm seeing here is, the developer's been speculating to develop some houses, and now they're asking for something that wasn't there when they purchased the land. I'm a little concerned about what I'm seeing on this drawing because it's actually showing some future development on the corner there that's owned by somebody who's not interested in selling. I think that's a little strange. We're showing a park there. I think a park is nice, but I think that is kind of showing that they're really interested in speculating and doing things that they didn't have when they spent the money, right? So I've heard before in a separate meeting that we've got some concerns about some other property adjacent to Webb Street that may be selling, and we need to perhaps put a road down Webb Street. Looking at this, I'm concerned that what would happen if we did this development and after this item, we have some variances that they're asking for as well. If we did this kind of a thing and we put that development behind here and we needed the street to come through Webb, we're looking at potentially eminent domaining this house on the corner to put in some additional street to make access agreeable for what we need to get back there with fire, emergency, etc. This street is already very tight. So from what I'm seeing with this density and the potential development here, I'm very, very concerned about what would happen with this street and the people that aren't interested in selling. Because if this goes up, you're more than likely going to take the land from the other side, given an opportunity, right? I don't think it's proper to put this kind of development in when we've got single-family homes across the street. Obviously, if we go with UDC, they can do that. But that's not today, right? We're asking to change the zoning to historic just for the zoning to put in the density, not because this is going to be historic. What we have on the other side of the street is actually historic for Roswell. So I don't like the fact that we're just changing something to historic to do something that is not historic here. It's a single-family home. Obviously, UDC, if that goes through, we may see some changes here. But there's nothing to stop this developer from putting homes on these lots or putting other things on these lots that are agreeable to the actual historic nature of this street. I know they spent the money. I know they've done other great things. I don't generally have a problem with this design, but it's not right for what's there today. And for these residents, I've heard from these people that they're not interested in selling. Some people are. I understand the financial motivation. Perhaps at some point in the future, others will want to sell on this street. But we've got what is effectively an HOA and planned community that's separate from public street that is now spilling out onto public street. And we're looking to rezone to historic to put in high-density, non-historic. It's a very different feel on the street when you've got a very small single-family home, a historic home for Roswell, and then brownstones across the street. Even if they're really nice, it's still going to be not what you would normally plan for a street like this when you've got some existing residences. The density in this area is too much. We've already got parking problems on Webb Street. You can't park there. I mean, people are parked crazy. You can't get an emergency vehicle down there. That should already be a concern for Providence and the community we have behind here. So I think that the builder should be concerned about what's going to be happening down this road, and I think the city council should be concerned about what we're going to be doing on this street from an access perspective. I would like you to promise these people that you won't eminent domain this property on the corner or any other properties on Webb Street. Thank you.
Mr. Schumacher raised a question of that he believed that this would require perhaps some taking of the lot on the corner, 78 Webb. Are we going to be required to take anything on 78 Webb Street?
Mayor, we have done no analysis about the horizontal and vertical geometry of that right now. So,
well, is it my understanding that the developer, let's just take an example. Let's say we do analysis,
okay,
and it says you can't get a fire truck back there under the current configuration.
I can talk to that exactly, because about 2 hours ago I met Ricky Spencer out there.
Well, then talk to that.
All right, we, I'm going to take a little guided tour here. When you see a flat map like this, it's a little misleading. Let me explain that the topography out there is actually quite significant. Can you go to that map real quick? Thanks. Okay, so just let's start down here at the bottom where that house is. Okay, so you come down, and as you make that turn, then you start going up a hill, and right there, stop. There's a huge oak tree just to the left there, and you're going uphill right where that arrow is. And on both sides of that street that's basically a ridge line, so it goes up. The street is 17 feet wide at that particular area, and Ricky tells me that he needs at least 10 feet to get his trucks through there.
10 more feet or 10?
10 feet. So if there's a car parked on the side of the road already, see, since there's really no bypass, you can't run up on the hill. The truck can't just basically go around on the say on the shoulder,
Right, so if
because
there's
the
somebody
shoulder's going
parked,
up.
it creates
It's a
problem.
very constricted area. Then you go around further up the Webb Street to around, and then you start. I mean, you really drop off. It is a very dramatic grade as it goes down. So you've got the horizontal curves and you've got the vertical nature of this, pretty much not suited for heavy fire apparatus. So in almost any case, obviously right now it's essentially a dead-end street, although with the new development there is some more traffic flow through there than there used to be. Before that, Webb Street was just fine. It really just had a few houses, very little traffic, not a big problem. Now we're seeing more traffic, the potential for the requirement for us to take a harder look at the traffic, the parking, those sorts of things. That is on us right now, and we're looking at that. Fire chief or the police chief and I are talking about parking restrictions and some other things.
Well, here was the question. There is a concern that if we approve this, that the city may have to do some taking on lot 78 Webb Street to make this work. Now, I wouldn't support the city doing that. I would strongly oppose that. And if it came down to the developer not being able to develop or not developing, and if he couldn't get fire access, what would happen? If the city did not improve that street, would he simply not be able to do his development? I know that they cannot force us to take property. They cannot force us to improve this road, I presume.
Mayor, I feel confident in addressing the road design elements of that. If you wanted to improve the street...
I'm not saying I want to improve this street. I'm trying to find out what happens. Could this road be improved by the developer on his side of the street without going over to lot 78?
It won't do much as far as say if we're discussing the access for a large fire truck. Improving the access on his side would not be the defining characteristic.
Is the city going to come back to us and say we need to improve Webb Street and take some property from lot 78? That's the real question.
Well, that obviously depends on quite a few things, Mayor. I mean, if we were to actually make the connections to, say, Coleman, like we had talked about at one time, or depending on how we view where we see Webb Street in the overall grid. Like, for instance, just throwing something out, if we wanted to turn Webb Street into a one-way, then that would change the dynamic and some of the characteristics, because you wouldn't have... The two-way traffic presents
You're
some
making this more complicated
I'm sorry.
than it needs to be.
Yes, sir.
And here was the question.
All right.
Mildred Blake's family is concerned that this development is going to create a situation in which the city is going to be forced to take some of their property to make this whole thing work. And I have told her I'm not going to support that. And I'm trying to find out from staff whether there's alternatives. Because I don't think this council doesn't want to take property from the Blakes. And we're not going to redo this street to make the developer happy. The developer needs to know this too. He needs to say, wait a minute, before I spend money to develop these lots, is the city going to then say, well, you can't put these lots in because you can't get access to fire trucks? You know, the developer needs to know this, the Blake's family needs to know this, and the council needs to know this.
Yes, sir.
So, because we're about to, I know we're just expanding the historic district, but if this all depends upon the potential for development, that development depends on taking property from Mrs. Blake, the Blakes have a good point.
They do.
So do we have an answer?
I do not have an answer for you at this time, Mayor. I can tell you that if it's the decision of this council not to acquire property for the road, then we're forced to not... the design would not fit with those parameters, and so we would be forced to either modify the design or just simply have a substandard road. And we have substandard roads in Roswell, and as long as they're low volume like this, it's really not a problem. It's when they begin to create more demand for traffic and then they become a problem.
I don't think this council is getting as far as Ed stuck about punching this road through Tacoma, and that's a whole different world.
I understand.
And a whole different venture.
Sure.
So, with the fire department, can the fire department live with the road in its current configuration with this development?
Well, I can't speak for the fire department, but I know that the road is of a concern to the fire chief as of just a few hours ago.
Well, is he going to, the fire chief is almost in the position to say you can not go forward if you can't get fire trucks back down there.
He can, Mayor, as long as the road in its current configuration is not obstructed with, say, a car parked on the road.
So
that's what I'm
we
saying.
would put limitations, no parking on the road.
That's what we're discussing right now.
That's a pretty simple solution.
Yes, sir.
Then everybody can live with that. Ms. Blake can live with that, and the developer can live with that. No parking on this street.
Yes, sir.
And our police can enforce this because there are folks who are tempted to drive off of Canton Street and park there.
The police chief and I are having a dialogue right now about when we can meet out there and go through those details.
So the simple solution may be no parking on this street.
Yes, sir.
Or do people currently park on this street?
Yes, sir. There were cars parked out there when we were out there 2 hours ago.
Are they neighbors, or are there folks from Canton Street who go down there to park?
I couldn't answer that, Mayor. I can address Alive After 5 because that comes up quite a bit. For Alive After 5, for special events, we put a barricade across Webb Street west of Mimosa Extension, and we say, no event parking. This is just for locals. And most people abide by that.
And so we'd have to put, to get really serious, we'd have to start towing people if they park there.
Yes, sir.
But that can be done.
Yes, sir.
I presume the developer has no plans for on-street parking.
We'd be cutting it our own land to add more parallel parking.
He needs to be on the mic.
But the question was, I assume that the Lehigh Homes has no plans to put on.
Yes, any parking that we would add, if it's street parking, it would be coming onto our property, cutting the curb, or there is no curb, but extending the curb to do parallel parking there.
Do we need to be talking about Lehigh Homes about a dedication of some right-of-way when they put this in? So that's not the Blakes, but the Lehigh Homes need to be dedicating some right-of-way, and that may be part of a development. I apologize if I have confused people, but I just wanted to try to address the issues. Thank you. Does the council have any questions? Councilman Orleans.
Well, I think you finally pressed to what I was trying to get to. Steve, where'd you go?
Can I sit down?
In Lehigh Homes, in order to make this project work, with the approval of transportation, with the approval of the fire department, and if you feel there is a widening, it's going to have to be on their side of the road only. And then, were you saying earlier that would not solve any issues by just taking right away from the one side of the road?
If we're talking about on-street parking, right now, that is a problem for the fire department.
I understand parking is, and I think that can be solved. I said this a while back. With the parking coming off Live to 5, it's ridiculous to have parking on the street, so we need to put no parking up anyway, no matter what's going on.
Yes, sir.
But
I'm working that.
So assuming that can help in that way.
Yes, sir.
And then if there's no parking there, you're saying current conditions, the fire trucks can work getting through there.
Yes, there was a fire this week, as a matter of fact, down there where they did get the fire trucks. It was a grass fire, and they put it out in short order. So they got their trucks down there and in and out without a problem, but there just happened to be nobody parking on the street at that point.
Okay. So separately, that on the side, would there be any requirement from Lehigh Homes to take some right-of-way on their side of the street to make some improvements now or for future right-of-way needs?
We would like to discuss with them the future right-of-way needs and laying out some geometries on there and seeing what the impacts are, curve designs and those sorts of things. Again, with the humps and the curves and the sight distances and the very narrow, there's no curb out there now. It's basically just 17 feet of asphalt, and then it just is what it is. So there's this really just sort of ditch or hill on each side. So
with that, then, if you get to that point, dictating whatever right-of-way may be needed, then it's up to them whether they can afford to put the right-of-way and still build the same complex or have to adjust their
Correct.
site plan totally.
Right, exactly.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Diamond.
So Steve, if there is no development, and the road is what it is, and we have people that park there, I mean, I'm not sure how the development changes the scenario, Mr. Mayor, that you're talking about. Can you, if there's no development and the road is the width that it is, and we want to improve the road, the same principles would apply, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Just for the record, we're not going to be supporting a taking of any of the Blake property. I'm not, and I don't hear any council members. I don't want anybody to be out there to be confused about what we've just discussed. And if the council member has any other thoughts, but we're not talking about taking the Blake property or forcing anybody to give up right away other than Lehigh Homes. And Lehigh Homes may have to give us a little right of way to make their development work. Just a last question. I know this is an old street.
Yes, sir.
Does it have any dedicated right of way outside of the curb, or is this one of those old streets that the right of way just goes to the curb?
It is both. There are some places where the right of way is. It's like Green Street. Very little right of way on each side of the traveled way right now. So it will be expensive for us to lay out a road that has some right-of-way impacts, and then we have to go out and do our purchasing of the fair market value of that, as we do with all our projects.
I can assure everybody in the audience that the council, although there have been discussions long-term about connectivity, there is no current ongoing discussions about widening this road.
That's correct.
Are there any other questions of council or comments before we go back to the public hearing? Yes, Councilmember Price.
Just to clarify, now, you said that there would be no purchasing of properties against anyone's will for private purposes, but if it were deemed that the road needed to be widened, either for this development or not, just because of parking issues, did your earlier comment include right-of-way or only include the taking of the entire property?
Is the question to me or to Steve?
The question's really to you, since you made the promise.
I am not supporting any widening of this road. On the Blake side, if Steve believes that a right-of-way expansion on Lehigh Homes is part of the development, and it's part of, for example, sidewalks, we're going to require sidewalks.
Yes, sir.
On the Lehigh Homes side of this, that's the standard practice. We
Yes,
would
sir.
require dedication of those sidewalks. If this Transportation Department believes the widening the road on that side makes sense, that would be another development impact. But we're not anticipating any taking of the Blake's property.
That's correct.
I can't tell you what some council might do 50 years from now. I can only tell you where we are today. Councilmember Price.
Yeah, just another question. The little, I don't know what you call that, peninsula, I guess, of non-historic property there, and I'm not sure who this question would be for, but that was carved out. Additionally, the three parcels we're talking about were carved out at what point and for what purpose?
They were never carved out. They were simply never included. That there wasn't a larger district and this was carved out of it. When the district boundaries were drawn.
1989, if I remember correctly.
When the district's boundaries were drawn, the residents of Webb Street did not want to be in the district.
No, you were born way before that, girl.
Thank you.
They simply, this is my understanding, would be the first change in the boundaries of the historic district since its creation.
The people who lived on Webb Street at that point in time, similar situation, they did not want to go in the historic district, so the boundary was drawn around it in this way. Because I lived right to the left of that corner there when it was happening.
And the reason at that time was because of anticipating this or other reasons?
There was no anticipation. The reason was they didn't want to force anybody into the historic district who didn't want to come in.
Okay, so anybody who went into the historic district did it by choice?
That's broader than I think is fair, but the city, to my knowledge, did not draw anybody into the historic district who objected to it. And this neighborhood expressed reluctance to come in.
Okay, my other question of numbers 79, 83, and 85, the pink ones that have been purchased, were those purchased, shall we say, under duress or any coercion, or were they free sales, or?
That would be the question to the applicant.
Yes, there were free sales.
Okay, no foreclosures involved, anything? Of
No
the sort?
foreclosures, no distress. 85 was actually owned by another developer who purchased it. I'm not sure what time. I have to go back and look at the title work. 83 and 79 were a sister and an aunt, and they were both wanting to sell.
Okay, is there any connection to either those two properties and any of the people present tonight?
Yes, there's a long history, and I've learned a lot about it in the last 8 months. But Laverne and Peggy are... Can you help? Laverne is Gwen's sister, and Peggy was your guys' aunt, is that correct? And Peggy was her aunt. And like Gwen mentioned, they're at 56 and 64 as well.
And where are 56 and 64?
If you look at the Mimosa extension, first one on the left there, the city actually owns some property in between there, and then 64 is a little further up on the left.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else in the audience wish to speak? Yes, come forward, please.
Good evening. I'm Sue Dupart, 500 Shadowwood Court. I took a walk on this property after the last meeting, and it was interesting to talk to nearby neighbors where it is like a mountain park-ish road. And one of my concerns is that you didn't do more of a comprehensive evaluation of determining the cost of widening the road, because once you put sidewalks, more people are going to take a break from Alive After 5 for a quiet, relaxing walk down a neighborhood street, and more people are going to be aware of it, and I think more people will cut through. I know if I'm going from Dosening and Barrington Hall, sometimes I don't Canton Street and Webb Bridge and come around and, try not to hit a pedestrian crossing from the Chandlery, further north on Canton Street. So I know it can invite more, the beauty of the landscape can invite more traffic through the development. And when you mentioned that large tree, I thought about, have we brought in the city arborist? Because these are pre-existing conditions that need to be known about what would be involved if the city, for safety, needs to widen the street. And I believe safety could be a reason of eminent domain that Fulton County could turn over your denial if there's a safety risk of the narrow road of accidents. So I think the city needs to look at this a little more comprehensively, and I think even though men have better visual distancing perception, I think without the professional documentation, this isn't quite professional, for our city. So thank you.
For the record, the city is not considering widening this street at this time.
And then my other question was Thanksgiving Day, when all the natives have their family over, where are they going to park?
Does anyone else wish to speak who hasn't had a chance to speak before?
Good evening. My name is Emily Winters. My mom lives at 57 Webb Street, Roswell, Georgia. And just speaking on, I've already addressed some of the issues about the utilities and the fires and on that particular street, and now they are coming to fruition that that some of the fire trucks can't get down there. We've had fires before. And just to speak on why they didn't become of the historic district back in 1986. I'd like to know why they didn't, because I remember it was a big issue back in that day. It was 1986 is when it was. Do you know why the residents didn't want to become a part of the historic district? I don't either, but they really opposed to that. I wanted to find out the historic, is that the homeowners association they'll have to pay fees and so forth for the gate that's there and all that kind of thing, egress ingress. Now, I was just...
Perhaps the developer, when he gets up, can answer your question. I couldn't answer your question.
Roswell has been a bedroom community. I grew up on 57 Webb Street. My mother and father chose to stay in Roswell, and what we used to call the alley. Her house, their home, burned down. We've had several fires down there. It speaks to the fire department. They chose to stay there. I opted, look, why don't you go to Windward and buy a house up there? She wanted to stay in Roswell, in the alley. And that's what I proceeded to do, is to build a home back on 57 Webb Street. And she's told Lehigh, Brandon, we spoke, and she wants to stay there. She really loves Roswell and Webb Street. And like I said, we spoke about the tax issues and the $1 million homes. We spoke about the sidewalks, the utilities that are not up to par. And I'm wondering if they're going to be dictated to by a homeowners association now.
They will not be dictated to by a homeowners association. The people who are not in Providence will not be answering to a homeowners association. No connection.
Oh, okay. About the one-way issue, that would probably eliminate some of that gate issue that we have now. I think I talked to Lehigh Home. He said that he would give my mother a clicker to get into the street from where it's not so.
Right now, we're not considering making it one way. What we are considering doing is, because of the people parking on this street who don't live on the street, making it no parking on the street. And that, as Nancy Diamond pointed out, is not created by Lehigh Homes in the development, but created by all the parking problem on Canton Street, which this city is looking for a solution for. And the solution is not going to be to put more people on Webb Street.
Now, that's really all I had to say. She's not one of the one that wanted to sell out. And I
hope she lives there the rest of her life, and I hope you'll live there the rest of your life.
I will. Thank you.
Great. That's wonderful. Anyone else wish to speak? Yes, come forward, please.
Hi, my name is Rania Schumacher. I live at 145 Prospect Street. I would just like to express my concern. I do understand the safety issue in regards to disallowing the parking on that street. However, that would diminish the property value for those residents. They would then, if parking is not allowed, they would have to put driveways on their property, which would have to be paved. They've been enjoying their property up until this point in a certain manner, and this would be diminishing that. So I would like that to be taken into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Seeing no hands up, the public hearing is closed. We'll give the applicant an opportunity not to present new information, but to respond to comments from the floor.
Thank you. I'll kind of touch on the transportation. Seems to be the hot topic right now, so let me address that first, and then I'll move through some other notes that I took here. Brad and Courtney and I sat down last week to review some comments that touched on a lot of these things. I heard someone mention an arborist, touched on the right-of-way stuff, touched on transportation, touched on water back there as well. And, these are all issues when we met with Brad last week that were items that we were going to be able to work through. As far as parking on the street, like Nancy mentioned now, and we've met with the fire department, there's not an issue with the street right now when no one's parking on it. We don't have people parking back there right now, and we're not going to be making the street any smaller than what it is now or adding any parking to the street. If we do any parking to the street in a parallel sense, it would be coming into, like you mentioned, we'd be deeding right away to the city, and it would be coming onto our property to provide guest parking. I think a little bit of the issue right now back there with parking is like Steve mentioned, is there's no curbs back there, and so there's no definition. And when you don't have that definition, it doesn't really provide any structure. So I think what you get now are people that are just randomly parking back there. We met with Sarah, who's not here tonight. She lives in 56. Webb Street. She asked us about a year ago. We actually just put up our own no parking signs on the side of the street to try and help them with this, and told them to call the city. So that's not an issue we can address. But I can promise you this: we're not going to be making the street any smaller. If we're making it any wider, it'll be coming from our side of the street. As far as what Evelyn and Sandra said, I really believe it's misspoken. At no point in time has myself or other members of my family or my company ever meant the term take of anyone's property. We've held 3 meetings since May 13th with residents, including one this past Saturday night at Miss Annie Strickland's house here, where we had about 15 people there. At no point in time did we ever bring up wanting to purchase or take anyone's property unless they were interested in it first. By calling Evelyn and Sandra, which I did multiple times over the last few weeks, and then also sent them a letter, it was not in discussions about buying the property. Our intention was to get comments from them about what's going on with what we're doing with the property and how we can serve their needs as well as ours at the same time. Unfortunately, I never received a letter back or never received a phone call back, so I wasn't given that opportunity to address their needs until what I heard tonight. So this isn't something we're trying to take or anything like that. Like you mentioned, Betty, the properties that we've already purchased were all people that were willing and wanting to sell, and a lot of them approached us after we kind of showed them our little master plan that we have back here. Evelyn and Sandra mentioned the heritage and the history, and it's really a little bit of a different situation because you have this historical district that we're wanting to expand, when in hindsight there's a lot of history that's already on Webb Street. And that's part of what we want to do, is we want to take these areas, just like we did in our previous development. We kind of base that off the history of Roswell with things that we have in there. Some of the parks that we've dedicated to the founders of Roswell. We see that opportunity to do that here now on Webb Street. With some of the family members here, why don't we remember them and memorialize them by improving on their property and giving them a place. I know that these families hold a big family reunion every August back here, and that's something where is special to them. Part of the park we want to create, we want to encourage them to come back and hold that family reunion here every year, whether all of them are still living there or no one lives there anymore. We want to keep that heritage back there. Something else that in regards to the history and the heritage that's back there is some of the offers that we've made to people, if they're not interested in selling, but they do want to stay in the area, we're even willing to build them a new home back there so that they can stay back there. So it's nothing of trying to force anyone out. I don't think if anyone knows me or my company, I don't think we've ever given off that impression. I live in this area. This is a project that's personal to me. I may end up being some of these people's neighbors back here, so I don't want that animosity between myself and them. In regards to kind of sidewalks and what we'd be doing there, yeah, we would be required to do historic sidewalks just like we did in the previous community, and do that to tie in, hopefully eventually all the way up to Bamosa, but at least at this point until Camp Avenue. Can you put my presentation back up? One thing I want to talk about to address the density concern and kind of what we're looking at here, the way that this street is currently zoned right now and what we're changing to, we would not be increasing the density to what it is right now. If Brad can pull this presentation up, with the 3 parcels we're bringing into the historic district and the additional parcel, which will be considered part of this phase, which is already historic, you have the ability to do 18 units there, even with the current zoning that's there. By changing it to historical, you'll have the ability to do 18 units as well. We're going to be doing 16 units. If you exclude 13, 14, and 15, that's part of the Canton Street Walk developments, but we just showed it on our master plan. Let me show you, here's the existing development. or the existing zoning, where we will not, and let me show you how we're not going to be decreasing this, and we looked at this as an option as well. If you look at 79, which is zoned R3, which you can do townhouses on as current zoning, R3 density gives you 8 units per acre, which is the same as the historic district, which is what we're asking for. On 83 and 85 Webb Street, that is R2 zoning, so you could only do 2 single-family homes there, which we understood, but then 93 and 111 are R2 zoning as well, but they're already included in the historic district, so you're able to do townhouses there if you wanted to. So one plan that we looked at, and we thought it would be less appealing, either for A, potential buyers, B, for existing people in the community, and then C, for Roswell, is basically taking 111 and 93 and front-loading that thing with all townhouses. And we could stretch townhouses all the way across that, where you'd have front entry garages, you'd be 3 stories from the street at that level, overlooking kind of onto Webb Street. We could do 2 single-family homes on 83 and 85 Webb Street, and then do another slew of townhouses at 79 Webb Street, where we could fit 5 or 6 townhouses in there as well. So we wouldn't be increasing any kind of density from what's back here already. What we want to do, and as you can see from the comments we've gotten about Providence and Historic Roswell, is we aim to create special places. And with the current zoning that's in here now, it makes it tough to make a special place. If we're able to change that zoning a little bit, it gives us the ability to create a special place with not increasing the density that's back there. Any other questions?
Mr. Walsh, your plan doesn't currently include the balance of 111, so just trying to understand your density comments. I followed all of it, but right now you're not showing any additional development to the left of Lot 1, but is there potential that could be developed?
No, where you see Lot 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, that is actually addressed 111 Webb Street.
Right, but my point being, there's additional property to the left of Lot 1, is there not?
Yeah, there is. We're not showing any additional development on this plan,
Right.
But what I was referring to with the density now is you could front-load townhouses parallel running to the street. If you look at the way we have them designed now, with mentioning back to my original concept of what we want to do here is a mix of single-family and townhouses. You could literally eliminate single-family home 1 and 2, turn townhouse building 3, 4, and 5 there, and stretch that out to do 6, 7, or 8 units of townhomes.
I guess what I'm just trying to, I understand where you're going with this. I just want to understand if you came back later and said, we want to put additional units to the left of Lot 1, wouldn't you then be increasing the density on the street from what it is today? Because your current the unit count you're showing on this illustrative plan is equal to the number of units under the current zoning.
Correct.
But it doesn't use all the property. There's still additional, looks like there's room for maybe 3 additional single-family houses to the left. So you could theoretically
there's a stream or a creek down there, so it's unbuildable. To kind of give you what I mean by doing more townhouses back there, single-family home lots 1 and 2 are both 60-foot wide there. So generally you can do a townhouse 20, 24, 28 feet wide. So just from lots 1 and 2, you could do 6 townhomes there.
All right. So you, in either case, you wouldn't be building to the left.
Any further left than number 1.
Okay.
No.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir. This time I'll entertain any comments or prior to any motion.
Just turn on the microphone.
Need a reading?
Yes. We need a reading. Please read.
An ordinance to amend the boundaries of the Historic Properties Overlay District as part of the official zoning map of the City of Roswell, whereas on February 13, 2013, the Historic Preservation Commission unanimously approved a report outlining the expansion of the Historic District boundary to include 79 Webb Street, 83 Webb Street, and 85 Webb Street. Whereas on March 12, 2013, the Historic Preservation Commission staff submitted the report outlining the Historic District boundary expansion to the Division of Historic Preservation of the Georgia Department of Natural Resources for review and comment. Whereas on April 5, 2013, the Division of Historic Preservation of the Georgia Department of Natural Resources issued support for the Historic District boundary expansion. Whereas a special public hearing was held before Historic Preservation Commission and the Roswell City Council on May 13, 2013 at Roswell City Hall at 38 Hill Street, Roswell, Georgia, to review and adopt the proposed amendment to the Historic Properties Map. Whereas as staff, the Historic Preservation Commission and the Division of Historic Preservation of the Georgia Department of Natural Resources have determined that it is with the city's best interest to include these vacant properties on Webb Street in order to ensure consistent development within the historic district. Now therefore, the Mayor and City Council of the City of Roswell hereby accepts the report attached hereto as Exhibit A and amends the boundaries of the Historic Property Overlay District to include 79 Webb Street, 83 Webb Street, and 85 Webb Street.
At this time, we'll entertain comments before I entertain a motion. Anyone wish to comment before we take a motion? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know there's a lot of unanswered details in the development itself, and I think until the developer has a better feel that he's going to have the opportunity to move forward on the project, he's probably not going to be ready to invest in hammering out those details. But the issue at hand in my mind is really, should we include this in the historic district or not, and what are the advantages and disadvantages? And I think that last discussion we had was pretty fruitful in my mind, because we're not increasing the overall density for this area, but by including it in the historic district, we're providing protections that I think will benefit both the city and the residents who live on that street. Because right now, somebody could come in and just develop on it with current zoning, and we don't control the architecture. As long as they fit within the current zoning and fit within the setbacks and so forth, they can build pretty much what they want, and we don't control the look of residential architecture. We do, however, control that in the historic district. So, as I mentioned in some of my earlier questions to Mr. Walsh, some of these units face the street, face Webb Street, and I think those elevations are critically important, and those can be controlled by our Historic Preservation Commission, and they are known to be tough and hold people to a very high standard. So I think there's a real benefit in including this property in the historic district, and it certainly has the support of our staff, our Historic Preservation Commission, as well as the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. So I am in favor of including this in the historic district.
To my right, comments? Councilmember Price.
Well, in addition to the historic designation, I guess going back to, what was discussed 20-some-odd years ago, it appears that we also are talking about setbacks, which really nobody has addressed at all, even though the concept plan is pretty vague at this point. So I haven't heard any real comment from anybody on some pretty significant...
Is that item 5?
Yeah.
Well, we're not voting on item 5 yet. I hate to say it, but we may have a whole other public hearing on item 5.
Oh, I'm sorry. Gracious sakes. Oh, we're going to have some fun, aren't we? All right, thank you.
Other comments? Councilmember Eichelhardt.
I want to second a lot of what Mr. DiPolito just said, because I think generally I agree with all that. And I had looked at this and I actually had done some of the calculations based on the densities, because that did concern me as well. But when you did look at what could be done, then that kind of makes it all equal. And my overall concern always about development is it actually dealing with the impacts that it creates. And I am concerned about the infrastructure aspects of that road and what's going through there. And I hope in the future, if it ever comes down to things have to be done on that road, that we don't come back, as someone said, and the future councils get let off the hook by saying, well, we have to have it wide for safety, so sorry, but we're going to have to take that property. So I hope that will never come to pass. But kind of the deciding thing for me is the same, is that it's the numbers that could be put there are there. So I think that kind of makes it a easier answer there. And I also want to commend Lehigh, because I think there are things that could be done even more, perhaps, in the future, or things could be rezoned. And I think they have tried to do not maxing it out as they could. It's obviously that's a good thing. But one of my concerns would be, and it's the same as with Groveway, frankly, is that these are nice individual single-family homes that have been well kept in the people's legacies, yet the concern is long-term, are we going to force them out based on taxes? And I think in Groveway there are some issues, but there are also a lot of nice little homes that people have lived in forever. And are we going to force them out based on the push for development through there? And that concerns me. I don't know how we resolve that, because as the mayor said, we're a small portion of what the taxes would be. But I think we should really have a discussion about that, not tonight, but really consider that, because that's a problem, I think, long-term for people who've lived here for a very long time, that we could have unintended consequences that are real for people. So, again, it comes back to, I think, the ultimate numbers of units that could be there anyway are pretty much the same, or are the same, and the controls that are allowed through the HPC process turn out to be a good thing. So it's very difficult, frankly, to decide on this one, but I think for what it is, it works best to be an historic district.
Anyone else wish to comment before I entertain a motion? Do we have a motion?
Yes, sir. I think to Rich and Kent's point, one of the reasons that we were the first city in Metro Atlanta to join the Georgia Initiative for Community Housing was for things like this. As we did Groveway, as we do these areas, we don't want to lose the character of the neighborhood, and that's going to be part of the discussion going forward on how we address all incomes of housing and all housing types, and how we make sure that our legislation is in place, and if we need to go to the county or we need to go to the state to look at how we do that, then we can absolutely do that. I want to reiterate the street concerns that have come up in this have been, were needed to happen regardless of this. I think we've come a long way already, and I've had conversations with most of the departments about how we're going to address those right now and anything going forward. And I want to reiterate that no taking of property. We don't go in and seize property even when we do widen a road. We negotiate, we purchase, we have conversations, and none of that is in this conversation. I think it's a respect for property owners. We respected the property owners who chose not to be in the historic district, with the understanding that they were in a caveat that you can see is in the middle of a block, basically, that was carved out for people who did not want to be in it. They weren't forced to be in it. But at the same time, when they do want to be in it, they should be allowed to come back in. So to me, it's a property owner's rights issue as much as anything. That does not mean that anything that happens tonight is the end of the road. Mr. Walsh is just beginning the myriad of fun that comes with going through staff and learning what needs to happen to the street and what needs to happen to the sidewalk and all the requirements that we have. And there's not a developer I've met who thinks that our staff makes that a simple process, because they hold them to the law and they hold them to our expectations. So with that in mind, I would move to approve adding this area to the boundary for the historic properties.
Motion to expand the historic boundaries by Councilmember Knapp. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember DeLisa. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Passes unanimously. We'll call a break now for the next item, which also involves this property.
The next item is variance 201-301-006, 111-93-85-83-79 Webb Street, Lehigh Homes, Brendan Walsh. Mr. Townsend will tell us about it.
The computer is frozen.
It's that new fancy program you have.
I know. Before you this evening is variances for 111, 93, 85, 83, and 79 Webb Street. They are the companion variances to the boundary change that you just acted upon. This is an aerial view of the location of Webb Street where the variances are proposed. This is the boundary change just approved by Mayor and Council at the second reading. This is the site plan that was submitted. It's very similar to the one submitted by Mr. Walsh. There's colored rendering this morning dealing with these parcels. This is a clarification related to each of the parcels and the setbacks that are being requested this evening. I wish I could. That's not what this new program, I don't think, could do. How was that? So parcel 7 and 8 deal with proposed townhomes, reducing the front yard setback from a minor street, as well as side setbacks in a minor street. Parcel 11 deals with the cottage homes. Parcel 5 deals with the single-family developments, setbacks from a minor street. I believe Mr. Walsh is going to make a clarification to one of these setbacks this evening. Staff reviewed this application and finds it appropriate for the variances to be included. They need to change it back. Change it back. Staff recommends approval of the proposed variances as they were submitted this evening with the 2 conditions.
Please turn on your microphone.
Question was, could you explain the need for these variances?
They allow for the front setbacks and combined locations to be in keeping with the existing development within the townhouse development that's currently there.
I presume staff believes these variances are either not objectionable or improve the site?
Correct.
And could you tell us your reasoning behind your recommendation?
They're actually in line with the way the existing development in the Providence development is located. They did receive variances for those existing townhomes, so we're trying to be consistent through the types of development for the townhomes and being in the development.
Thank you. Does the council have any questions for Brad? Councilman Orleans.
Brad, does this, my understanding, and tell me if I'm correct or not, these variances help turn those townhomes so that they're not having to put a row of townhomes facing Webb Street on the one side, and then on parcel 11, this is also what allows putting in the single-family homes, again, trying to keep the single-family homes in this street and so forth?
Yeah, they allow for those types of developments. It creates an opportunity to put the alleys behind so the garages don't face the street also, and they're working the best with the grades in dealing with the 2 stories and 3-story scenarios that they need to be created.
So it helps improve for what they're trying to get?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
For those of us who are visual learners, can you show how this works on the plat?
These are the townhouse locations.
You need to move
Lower it down.
Okay.
flat a little bit so we can see it. There we go. Thank you.
These are the townhouse locations, so the request is allowed to, push it to the locations, allows the alleys, so they end up rear-loaded here, and then the alley here gets into the development, so these locations, and this, as you can see, this is topography where it goes away. This allows them to push up to the street to get the proper locations.
Thank you.
So I'm trying to understand this still. So for parcels, on parcel 11, I guess, which is parcels 1 and 2? No.
Parcel 11 relates to the cottage homes, allowing this type of development to take place to maintain the existing specimen tree on parcel 11.
So where is the variance? The interior lot line? So there's an interior, there's a rear setback, which is 20 feet to 0, and that impacts which property?
This location here.
So they're impacting essentially their own property.
They're impacting this area, and this is a detention parcel in the other development. There's no homes there.
Okay. And then there's a front yard setback that brings the house a few feet closer to the street.
This location here.
Yeah. All right, and then on the townhouses, those essentially just slides the building right or left, closer to the driveway or the street.
These two, right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If this, I'm going to hear from the applicant.
A question?
Councilmember Price.
So, are any of these requests then variable or interchangeable, or are they all very specific to the lots?
The variances are to the individual parcels, correct?
So we don't mix and match or end up with all townhomes or what have you?
No.
Thank you.
This time we'll hear from the applicant.
I'll kind of walk through and explain a little bit, hopefully it'll answer some of your questions. And for Betty, if there's anything that I need to, I don't know what the procedure would be of signing what we're doing here into place from a conceptual standpoint that,
It's just that earlier I thought I understood you saying, well, this could go here or we could switch it and make it go here. But if we're now approving it specific to parcel, how can you do that?
No, what I was referring to earlier in the previous presentation is the current zoning, the way that we could do it as in place now, is we could do townhouses in certain locations that there aren't townhouses. What we're trying to do is maximize the appeal, the look of what this is by changing the zoning. By doing that, it creates a few of these variances, which I can kind of walk you through. If you look on the parcel here, the first one we'll start with is parcel 11, which I have circled. That's where we have the 4 cottage homes. And the reason why we're asking for a variance here is we've designed this around a large specimen tree which sits in the middle of that property. If you visit the property, you would see what I'm talking about. It's a very old tree. It'll be the focal point of that. It creates kind of a little, almost like a village setting here. What we're looking for from a setback is, and if you look at this site map here, would be a 10-foot side setback and front setback. That would be from Webb Street on the front there, and then on the side to Ms. Strickland's property. With 10 foot is not a variance. That's what the standard is. Really where we're looking for the setback on this one is between the 2 units, and it really calls out the 2 the east unit there. You can see how close they are. And then the abutting property, which is the Canton Street Walk Condo Association.
So it's primarily to accommodate a tree.
To accommodate a tree, and then the single-family homes as well. The next parcel is parcel 7 and 8, which I have circled here. These parcels are going to be combined for the 7 brownstone or townhouse units. Like Brad mentioned, the reason we're doing this is we want to do this alley load rear entry garage, which I mentioned in the first presentation. We didn't have the ability to do that in Providence and Historic Roswell, but starting with a blank canvas here, it gives us some of that ability. Another tree save type situation here where we are, if you look where units 10, 11, and 12 are, to the north of that, there's another large specimen tree. We could have done a 4th unit there and still been under our density requirements, but when you see that tree, you can see why we'd want to save it to enhance the natural area that's back there. So we're pushing those units closer to Webb Street, and then the 0-foot setback line is once again into our abutting property where it's an unbuildable area. It'll be an organic garden eventually. And then the last parcel is parcel number 5 and 6 to the west over here. Same scenario. We've got the townhouses which are turned, so we're pushing those closer to Webb Street. And then the homes, like Brad mentioned, kind of that new urbanism feel, and then along with the topo, moving those homes to as close to the streets as possible there. By turning the townhouses and doing the rear load garages, it really helps blend in with the rest of the single-family homes that are back there, because you'll be looking at the side of a building that is typically 50 feet wide, as opposed to if you were looking at the entire string of either 3 or 4 units, you're looking at either 90 to 120 feet wide, so less is imposing there as well. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you. This time, does anyone in the audience wish to have any questions or comments? Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments on these variances? Seeing no hands up, do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Diamond. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Orleans. Any further discussion?
I need to ask. I'm sorry. I need to mention with the 2 staff conditions.
If you'll mention those 2 staff conditions.
I'll read them. The approved variance is based on the concept plan stamped received by the City of Roswell Community Development Department on April 23, 2013, and that Mayor and City Council approve the expansion of the historic district boundary to include 79, 83, and 85 Webb Street, which we just did.
Mr. Orleans is your second stand. Mr. Eichelhart, did you have a question?
No, just a comment that I wanted to thank Mr. Walsh, because many times when we have variances, it is to try and squeeze more things in there, so I generally oppose them. And project that we just had could have moved some things around to save a 42-inch tree, but they decided not to. It was a whole lot easier just to chop it down. So I appreciate your efforts in following through on saving 2 big ones here. Thank you.
Any further comments? Councilmember Price.
Along that same line, though, is it determined that we're not in the critical root zone?
Yeah, we had Andy out there to take a look at things for us, and our engineer as well. So we'll have protective measures we'll have to do during construction to protect them, but we'll stay out of those zones.
So
go ahead.
Just so the intent is to preserve the tree at
yes, absolutely.
great cost.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any additional comments before we entertain a vote? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. We'll take a 5-minute recess, but back at 9:05.
Mr. Mayor, just one item. Do we know when this is going to go to HPC for the public? We don't know?
Soon.
All right, thank you.
No, we do not have a date. We'll take a break. Or move into the hall, we would appreciate it. Councilman Orleans, that means you need to come to the dais. Steve Stroud, you need to have a seat. Stu Mooring, you can sit down. Then everybody else was doing it. Oh, I better sit down, boy, fingers me. Councilmember Diamond, you may call the next agenda item.
Thank you, sir. The next item is CU 201-300-576 and CV 201-300-577. This is 1200 Grimesbridge Road, ILM Academy, Hamad Sophie, Land Lot 487. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you very much. This is an application to remove 33 parking spaces located to the rear of the property and replace the area with green space, a play area for students.
Move to approve. I can't make a motion. I'm just expressing an opinion. You may proceed.
My presentation is concluded. The applicant is looking to place a playground along the rear of the property. The one variance relates to the rear setback from the R2 property to enclose the mechanical equipment in that location. This is the existing survey of the property showing the building facing Grimes Bridge Road. There are one access to Colonial Park Drive, one access on Grimes Bridge, and two accesses to Maxwell Road. This is the proposed conceptual site plan showing how they will remove the landscaping, or remove the parking, and include the landscaping and development of this location. Staff would recommend approval of the proposed site plan with conditions included in our resolution of this evening, as well as approval of the proposed variance.
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember Price.
Yeah, I got a few questions here. One, this is considered a redevelopment, is that correct? I mean...
I'm not sure if I would define it as redevelopment. They're removing the parking lot to put in a play area. They're not redeveloping the building in any manner. They're readapting the building to utilize it as a school.
Okay, because I just remember in our redevelopment discussions earlier, and this really refers to the front piece, which I guess has already been approved, although it never came to council. There was a detention pond at the south end of the building that was supposed to be included in any redevelopment plan. Did that just sort of go by the wayside? Was that just a rhetorical exercise?
You're indicating a detention pond next to Maxwell Road?
Yes.
I don't believe there's any changes to that location of the site, correct?
Does anybody else remember that? That we showed a picture of a pond there and...
Well, the pond exists. I believe it's the detention for the site before it... I think it actually probably takes drainage from the road even.
So where is that?
I believe the detention area is located in this area. It includes some of the road right away.
Okay, so there've been no required changes there.
No.
It's exactly the same.
Correct.
And then when the front parcel was determined to be the school, what number of spaces were required at that time? Did it include these at the rear?
The 93 space or 99 spaces on site, they're removing 33 of them. So that leaves 66 spaces, which are sufficient for the school for any type of number of students as well as faculty that they would have.
And that's, do we have school standards for parking, or what do we have anything like that?
As in what the current requirement would be? I think it's per classroom, isn't it?
Any other questions?
It's one parking space for 300 square feet. So the square footage of the building is about 14,700, which would require 49 parking spaces.
Okay, and the what's the carpool, like drop-off plan once that back area would be reconfigured?
Well, they would maintain the Colonial Drive access, so that could be an access, or the drive on Grimes Bridge through down to Maxwell. This location from Maxwell is, probably for staff or administration, because these two parking lots don't connect currently.
Okay, so this rear portion that we're talking about was not part of the approval of the first portion of the permit?
Correct. The front along Colonial, Grimes Ridge, and Maxwell is not being changed. It's only this rear portion along Colonial.
Okay, it didn't need that number of spaces for the original permit?
The original permit for the post office, the original permit
For the school?
For the school, no. They're not required to. They only need, for the requirement, 49 spaces.
So for parking purposes, it's irrelevant?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Orlins.
Brad, my main concern with schools that have been coming in recently is morning drop-off and afternoon pickup and spilling out into Main Street. So my concern is about the spillage coming out of Grimes Bridge. Was there any discussions with the applicant about closing that driveway in Grimes Bridge so that they were definitely coming in off Colonial Parkway and going around the front of the school and out Maxwell? Or is that something the applicant can address, or was there any discussions on it?
There's been no discussions with the applicant related to that issue now, and when it was reviewed by Transportation, that was not brought up.
Yeah, I've had too many experiences on the streets of Roswell at morning time.
Yes.
So I'd like to hear the applicant address that question. Thank you.
Okay.
Just a comment. The applicant is not asking to expand its interior space. This isn't a major redevelopment. He's asking to do what the city really wants them to create more green space and more pervious surface, and to put an additional burden upon him to change other right-of-way to do something that really is not, I think it's benefiting the city. I would hope that the council sees this conversion of pavement to green space as a very positive matter and not something which we would want to extract additional concessions from, because he's doing the right thing. And I don't think he's not losing any of his stacking area by converting this parking area to green space. He's simply creating a more environmentally acceptable place. So I hope the council sees this as a positive thing and not place additional burdens upon him to do what's a great thing. Other questions the council may have?
Yes, sir.
Councilman Orlins, yes.
To respond, I agree. I think it's great that they're tearing up the parking lot in the back and getting rid of some impervious surface. But I'm looking at the whole site plan, the whole issue, which is why I'm paid the big bucks to be up here to look at. And I've run into too many situations where all the schools, especially the ones that were put in a long time ago, spill out on the major streets. And we are trying to work with every school that comes in now to try to make sure, including public schools, to make sure they don't fall out in the major streets. So I think it's part of the overall decision on this, even though I think it's very positive in what they're doing, for consideration tonight. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we hear from the applicant? This time we'll hear from the applicant.
My name is Michael Kidd. I'm with Root Design Studio. I'm the landscape architect for the project. And I'm just going to talk through real quick what it is that we're proposing to do on the site plan. Just for a quick orientation, Colonial Park Drive is up on the top of the sheet here. Grimes Bridge Road is off to the right-hand side, and Maxwell is down off the bottom of the sheet. The area in question is this area in the back part of this is the existing building here, and about 2/3 of this is zoned OP currently. There's about 18,500 square feet of existing parking that we're going to be removing and converting into the multi-purpose play area. Just to kind of walk through the plan real quick, coming off the building, we're creating a little entry here with possibly an arbor and a bench to signify the entrance into this space. Immediately as you enter, there's a small outdoor classroom area which is adjacent to a proposed vegetable garden, which is along the north property line. The reason for it being in that location is that it's going to receive direct sun pretty much all day through most of the year. And then at the far end of that, we're showing a small utility area with a storage shed and a compost bin, probably a rain barrel to catch some of the rain from the storage bin. That's currently the location for the dumpster pad for the old post office. Backing up again to the entry, as you come in, the primary element for the whole play space, which kind of orders the whole area, is a 6-foot wide pathway that loops all the way through the play area. And immediately upon entering, we're showing a pollinator garden, which is there to serve for the vegetable garden, but also to be an educational component for the kids. Coming a little bit further down the pathway, we've got shown right now a 4-square court. That could be something like hopscotch or tic-tac-toe or any number of outdoor games. It's basically just a flat paved area for outdoor recreation. We're also showing a labyrinth, which is the same kind of idea there. And then moving around the loop, this area in yellow is the primary area for the play structures, which would be things like swing sets and monkey bars for physical activity for the kids for recess. Coming around the loop, we've got in the south end, we've got a grass berm, which centers around a stage area, which also serves as an outdoor sundial, another educational component. Down along the very south border, we've got a vegetated buffer, which already has some existing vegetation, and we'll enhance that with additional vegetation as well. Moving further around, we've got another outdoor classroom area next to the building, which is also adjacent to a rain garden to help take some of the stormwater from either the roof of the building or the adjacent parking lot.
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple questions. The playground area, just out of curiosity, what's the material on the ground? You have it yellow, but it's...
That would be a mulch playground area.
Okay.
Yes.
And how's the labyrinth constructed? Is that a hedge?
No, it wouldn't be a hedge. It would be on the ground plane, and it would probably be pavers or some sort of paved stone.
Oh, okay.
But those elements we're still working out. But those are the kind of play elements that we're talking with the applicant about right now.
I know Councilmember Price is a huge fan of labyrinths. She's been trying to get one in Roswell for a while, so
okay.
I'm sure she'd support that. Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions? Councilmember Eichelhardt.
In the meeting for the DRB, they talked about street trees, obviously not part of this, but along Grimes Bridge. Do you think there's any opportunity for that? And I realize, to the mayor's point earlier, that we don't want to put conditions that are too hard for you, but that is what most people are going to see. And do you think there is any opportunity?
Honestly, I haven't looked at the street tree issue along Grimes Bridge. My focus was the play area in the back of the building.
I do understand it's not a standard rezoning with that being a part of it, but I did notice that was a lot of discussion during the DRB meeting that could enhance the overall property. I'm not sure that we want to put a condition on that, but if there is a possibility, consider that.
Councilmember Price.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. One regarding the labyrinth. What are the dimensions of that?
That space is about 15 feet in diameter.
15 feet in diameter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, mighty small labyrinth.
Yeah.
All right. Not exactly the category of what I was having in mind.
Well, I mean, it's not a very big space.
Right.
So,
Well, at least that won't preclude me from continuing to push for a proper labyrinth somewhere
well, I mean,
else.
this is a small outdoor play space for children.
Introductory lab, beginner's labyrinth.
And my other question, I understand the school maximum number of students is anticipated currently 120, but could go up to 180. So I'm still concerned about the morning, afternoon traffic. I know in the Planning Commission minutes there was a note by someone saying, well, when it was a post office, there was traffic coming and going all day, but that was fairly spread out, whereas in the morning and afternoon, if we have, and it's young students, so presumably they're going to have someone dropping them off, picking them up. I don't know if there's buses involved. I'm guessing not. But in any case, that could be a lot of cars coming all in a very tight time frame in the morning and the afternoon. So I'm just wondering if with this playground area we're taking away the possibility of another curb cut or what have you to stack some of those cars coming in off of Colonial
Can someone
Parkway.
tell us about how you accommodate students arriving that are driven and how they're going to circulate, and that might address Councilmember Price's concern and Councilmember Orland's concern, because it doesn't directly relate to this, but I think it is a legitimate concern, is how do you handle the students arriving at the school?
Sure. Okay. My name is Hamad Sufi, and I'm part of the board of the school.
Maybe if you can give us a bigger overall plat, it'll help him show it.
Or you can just show the site plan. Can you? Okay. All right. Yeah, sure. So, just to give a background, we are a small school. Right now we're about 120 students, about 73 families, 50% siblings. We get about, I think, 35 to 40 cars in our current location in Roswell, which is in Roswell Business Center across from the hospital on Alfred Highway. The 180 number is, I think, what our maximum growth is going to be, given our growth, given our history. What we're trying to do is we're here in front of Mayor and City Council because of the conditional use for the back portion of the property, which is this part over here. As far as traffic is concerned, we don't have a set plan at this point, but we're working out some of the details. We're going to see what works and whatever works and what doesn't cause any disruptions to the neighbors, to the residents, in the subdivision on Maxwell Road. We'll work with them. Initial plans were to come in from Colonial Park Drive and do the drop-off here, and then be able to exit on Grimes Bridge Road.
Maxwell and Grimes.
I'm sorry, be able to exit on Maxwell Road by making a left onto Grimes Bridge Road and trying to avoid Maxwell Road in the mornings. Right now we have 8:30 is when the school starts, and we have two pickups. We have two dismissals. One is for the pre-K, which is 12:30, and then we have another which is at 3:30 for the elementary school. I think about at this point about 25 to 30% of our students are in pre-K, so they leave at 12:30.
So where's the main entrance?
The main entrance can be on Grimes Bridge Road right here. That's where the main entrance is. So we were thinking that we want to maximize the number of cars on the lot in the morning, and I think that this would be the way to do that, perhaps. We're open to working, with the neighbors and with the city, to ensure that we don't create any nuisance, on city streets.
So how many cars do you think might stack up at one time?
On the property?
Yes. How many cars people are currently coming to the school?
Yeah, right now, as I said, there's about 73 families, a lot of them carpool, so about, I think, 35 to 40 cars. And a number of our students actually are also children of staff, so they would come and they would park on the property itself. I would say at this point about 17 or so students are children of staff.
Other questions? Councilman Orlands.
I think if, what you're talking about, can work well, coming off Colonial Park and going out Maxwell. Because my concern is, if you're not having any control on cars while they're lined up coming in that way, of somebody trying to turn in left off of Grimes Bridge or come in right off of Grimes Bridge and then back up out on the Grimes Bridge. That's kind of where my concern is, because I've seen it in other situations around the city that we've tried to solve. So that's why I was talking about the possibility of just closing off that one entrance off of Grimes Bridge, or I don't know how we can control it, or if you temporarily close it in morning rush hour when you've got everybody coming in. But that's what my concern is cars backing up from that line out on the Grimes Bridge Road.
Could that be controlled just by directional signs?
Yes, we intend to do that. Right now, even we have some of our teachers and volunteers,
pull in off Colonial. You can give, it's a fairly small student body, and you can just give directions on how to enter.
I believe we can do that. We're doing that right now. We're in a business park. We're in a suite, and we've got neighbors in the next door suite. So we've created a pick up and drop off procedure, and we're making sure that we don't disrupt the neighbors. So.
Well, I'm trying to think of when you're growing too, when you have a lot more students, what you have now. So that's where my concern is just blocking up Grimes Bridge Road.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant of council? Councilmember Price.
Is there any plan for I know from the Planning Commission notes that there was discussion of a high school. Was that meant to be on this site or elsewhere?
At this point, we want to go up to 8th grade. Any discussions beyond 8th grade really it's too preliminary and too early. This is not a very big piece of property, so at this point we don't have any plans at this point to go beyond 8th grade.
And is there any possibility of using that rear part for an expansion of the building and or a ball field or something like that?
The rear part, you mean?
Right.
The part that's under discussion
right.
today? Mm-hmm. No, again, that's since it's an OP zoning, I believe that we'd have to come back to the city to go through the process to get an approval again. One more thing is if we don't put a playground in the back, we're going to put a playground somewhere else on the property, and really the best place to put it is in the back, because other places would really disrupt the flow of property, disrupt the flow of traffic on the property. So that's why we thought in the back would be the best place to put the playground, where you can still maintain traffic flows, you can still use most of your exits, and you can fit as many cars as possible on the property during pickup and drop off.
Now, where's the nearest house? Residence? Is that those?
I'm sorry?
Where's the nearest residence? Is that
the nearest residence is right over here.
So there's
south of the property.
There's a home there?
There's a home here, and there's a line of homes going this way. To the left of that.
And you show a buffer between the home and the play area?
Yes. That was on the conceptual design.
Now, if I guess they would be here if they were interested, but if I were the office park next door, I guess depending on what type of office they're conducting there, having the kids that are playing absolutely as close to the boundary as it shows here might be cause for concern. That there's no buffer at that side. I'm not sure what goes on in those office buildings there, but if I were doing something that required some concentration or, meeting with clients, and there's no buffer between that boundary and their building, it could get noisy. Which I guess we have a noise ordinance, but we would hate to have to rely on that. Was there any thinking of putting the bulk of the kids playing closer to the building as opposed to at the very edge?
I'll leave that to the technical folks here.
This is Michael Kidd with Root Design Studio. One of the driving factors in that was needing to deal with some of the stormwater. which was part of a preliminary discussion that I had with somebody with the city. And the logical area to do that is in this location here. There's an existing storm drain, and the majority of the paved impervious surface where the runoff is going to be coming from is this way, sloping down to that storm drain. So this makes a logical sense for dealing with stormwater in that location. If we had the play area closer to the building, then we're running the risk. Well, we would either have to pipe that underneath the play area into the storm drain, which doesn't deal with any of the water quality issues, or we'd have to run it across the surface, which you'd have an issue with the mulch running off there. We also wanted an outdoor play space, or an outdoor classroom area closer to the building itself. So that was, with the layout that we ended up with the lawn in the center of the space, this became the logical place for the play area.
Yeah, again, it would seem like a buffer. I mean, kids are just noisy, you know. They squeal and they have a great time, but sometimes their sounds are piercing and loud. And if I were trying to conduct business, looks like 10 feet away, that could be a problem.
Is that a question?
Yeah, my question would be, in the schools, what in general, in the public schools and others, is there a standard of distance between a playground or play area and the surrounding?
If it's Fulton County schools, they do what they want.
We can have the architect address it.
My name is Abdul. I'm the architect for the project. There is no a buffer required between OP and C1 and C3. So the landscape, we emphasize the fact that we keep the buffer between the residential. Just 40 feet of buffer will reduce any noise from the kids between the residential and the playground. But between OP and C3, we didn't found that any buffer will be required.
I assume there is a fence.
Well, we will have a fence around the property because the thing is exactly.
Yes. You know when that fence will be constructed?
We're gonna work with the design board.
So that fence will create a visual barrier to some extent.
Should. And anyway, the kids...
and block some...
Please turn on your microphone.
That's correct.
Just saying, that given that this is a playground with kids, my presumption is you're going to put a fence to keep the kids from running off, because kids will do that from time to time.
That's correct.
And that will give you an opportunity to create a little bit of a buffer, that fence.
The intent is to actually fence not only the playground but the entire property as well.
Other questions, Councilmember Price?
Not at this time, thank you.
Other questions the council may have? Does anyone in the audience wish to comment on this? Any further comments from council before we entertain a motion? Yes, come forward, please. You'll give us your name and address?
Of course. My name is Sue Dupart, 500 Shadowwood Court, and I have concerns like Mr. Orland's because all the neighboring properties have two entrances. And so when you think of the bank off of Colonial Park, is a PNC, I think now, that has two curb cuts. And then Billy Moscow on the other side on Maxwell has two curb cuts. The post office building, the commercial property has two curb cuts onto Maxwell. That is a residential street that has had the bumps, or what do you call the raised elevation of the road, added to slow down traffic. And I know at 9 o'clock, if I'm walking down Grimes Bridge, UPS trucks are filing down Grimes Bridge. I saw a traffic counter out there one day, so I don't know what the results are. But then you get lunchtime, people might be going to Marketplace. But the whole area, what the city doesn't show is how many curb cuts are in a small area where we can't put traffic lights, in that close of a proximity. We're not in the village district, so we don't have the benefit of spacing our curb cuts. And I think when you do these diagrams, you're missing the whole big chaos predicament on a rainy day. If it's payday, people are going to the bank. If it's lunch hour, there's all those variables combined that create a safety issue. So I wish the city would look at the whole big picture so that we don't recreate the traffic we had at the holidays when we had a post office. Because a lot of people have gotten used to the commute from Cobb County to Old Roswell, and then when we finish our parallel road of North Point and 400 going all the way to Windward, we're going to have all the more traffic. So that's my concern, just like you, Mr. Rollins. Thank you.
Anyone else from the floor wish to comment? Yes, come forward, please.
Ann Koenig. I have a practice building across from the mosque that is on Marketplace.
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
Yes. Ann Koenig. I have an office that is across from the mosque on Marketplace, and my question
That would be not this facility, the
correct.
The other facility behind Hooters.
But the question relates to this facility.
Okay.
Okay, and my question is to the gentleman here, and that is, will there be a pedestrian transit from the community center mosque to this school at any point in the day, as the streets don't have sidewalks?
So is there going to be any transport between
Pedestrian transport of children from...
I can't remember that it's a masjid or something. It's not a mosque, but it's whatever that facility is. You gentlemen familiar with that?
The RCM, if you're talking about the RCM.
Is there will there be any transport between those two facilities?
There possibly maybe on Fridays for the Friday prayer. That would be probably, I think it would be around maybe 1:30 or so. Again, possibly. It depends on our program.
So would that be walking or in a vehicle?
We were thinking walking, but again, it's just an initial idea at this point. I mean, we have school on Friday, and we were thinking maybe for the older kids, they may want to go for the prayer on
Friday. It's great
Friday.
to walk.
I'm sorry?
I encourage walking.
So yeah, that's a potential. But again, we haven't discussed it with the mosque or anything like that, so just an idea.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Does anyone else from the floor have any questions or comments? Not. Public hearings closed. At this time, we'll entertain any comments before we entertain a motion. Any comments before a motion? Councilman Orleans.
Mr. Halsey, is there any way that we can condition even a temporary closure on that driveway coming off Grimes Bridge for an hour and a half in the morning during drop-off?
I don't think they're related to the conditional use for that, and I don't think it would stand up in court. I think that we've had on the record that the gentleman says that they will do everything to do that, and we can certainly hold him to his comments that he's going to try to do that. So if transportation sees a problem, we can either do a nuisance case or do something along those lines to control it, but I don't think we can do a condition.
Just strictly voluntary on their part? Right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we entertain a motion? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the requested conditional use with concurrent variance, including a reduction in the rear building setback in order to enclose the existing loading dock and allow the building to expand into the existing slab for property at 1200 Grimes Bridge Road with the following conditions. 1, the owner-developer develop the property in substantial accordance with the plan stamped received May 9th, 2013 by the City of Roswell Community Development Department. The perimeter fence indicated on the plan shall be approved by the Design Review Board, and the landscape green space play area shall be approved by the Design Review Board.
Motion by Councilmember Diamond for approval. Is there a second? Motion for second by Councilmember DiPolito. Any further discussion before we entertain a vote? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That is Orleans, Eigelhart, DiPolito, Diamond, all opposed. That Price is opposed. That passes 4-1. Gentlemen, thank you for bringing that. I hope to see, I wish I could see more parking lots converted into playgrounds. I don't think there's a better conversion that can happen in the city of Roswell. So I, for one, am very pleased to see this go forward. Thank you.
Next item is approval of a resolution to amend the Economic Development Incentive Policy, and Alice Wakefield is here to talk about it.
Okay. Yes. This request is to amend the city's economic development incentive policy. The proposed amendment includes the following revisions: to amend the number of jobs from 50 jobs to 5 jobs, to remove the required capital investment, to expand the Economic Development Incentive Committee to include the council liaison to the Community Development Department, to revise the wording in the compliance section by removing the words related to the audit and the second sentence that was in the version that was presented at committee. And finally, to allow the Economic Development Incentive Policy Committee to approve incentive requests under $25,000. With that said, staff's recommendation is approval.
Any questions? Do we have a motion for approval?
Move to approve the resolution.
Motion to approve the resolution to amend economic development incentives. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito, motion by Councilmember Diamond. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Discussion by Councilmember Orleans.
Can you give a synopsis of why we're making these changes? I mean, from 50 jobs down to 5 and investment and so forth. After all the time we put into setting this up to start with, I'm just curious as to what is driving this.
I think if you recall at the committee meeting where this incentive was approved, there seemed to be consensus to make the policy available to small businesses.
Yeah, I was not able to be at that committee meeting, so.
Yes, sir. And based on that and based on working with the RPA, we felt that it was important to bring forward an amendment that would give more flexibility to provide the incentives. Roswell is a city that's really most of the jobs are less than 100 jobs. We have very few jobs that are over 100 employees. Most of them have 5, 10, 15, 20 jobs. The capital investment of $15 million is quite a significant amount. We felt that we could be more flexible on that. We also have, based on a matrix that was developed by the finance director, that will analyze business, the percentage of the incentive based on a variety of factors, so we can provide some level of an incentive from someone creating 1 employee down to an investment of something like $10,000. I think that's right.
You're saying 1 employee, but this is saying 5 employees?
When we presented this at committee, we had indicated 1 or more employee. The consensus at committee was to make it 5 employees.
Mr. Stroud, would you come to the microphone and see if anything you can add to that? I know you are a supporter of this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. At the work session, we did discuss the fact that the incentives are currently written for the larger employers, and what we're trying to do, what we're trying to do is encourage the smaller investor and the smaller employer to bring and grow their business within the city. So this will give that opportunity. Steve Stroud, 205 Devereaux Circle.
Other questions? Do we have a motion? We have a motion and a second? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That is unanimous. At this time, we'll call upon Councilmember Rich DiPolito, Liaison to Admin and Finance Department.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is approval of an ordinance of the City Council to authorize Fulton County to conduct an election. This is the second reading. Mr. Fisher.
Halsey, if you'd read it, please.
Can I make a quick clarification on a note that I made? It does not change the contract or the amount. In the description, I had on there 16 voting days when you saw it in committee. It's actually 16 working days that they're contracting us with. It's 15 voting days. The Saturday is their work day to take all of the data that they get from the early voting, get it ready to go into the count for the actual general election. So there is 16 days, there's 15 voting days, and in the last description, I had 16 voting days, so I just wanted to make that clarification.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Halsey, if you'd read the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City Council to authorize Fulton County to conduct elections. Whereas on November 5, 2013, election will be held in the City of Roswell to elect City Council members for posts 4, 5, and 6, and for mayor. Whereas OCGA Section 21-2-45 provides that a municipality may authorize and contract with a county to conduct elections. Now therefore be it ordained by the mayor and council of the City of Roswell, and it is hereby ordained and established by authority of the same, that the mayor is authorized to enter into a contract with the Fulton County Department of Registration and Elections to conduct this election using express poll or other such measures approved by the Georgia Secretary of State, which contract is attached hereto and incorporated herein, and the remainder of the ordinance is incorporated herein by reference.
Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second? Motion by Councilmember DiPolito, second by Councilmember Diamond. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Price, I'm sorry. That was Councilmember Diamond. Motion by Councilmember DiPolito. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further? Councilmember Orleans.
Again, I've got to go on the record, this outline of expenses from Fulton County. Okay, two things. We're either using current full-time people that are doing this, or they're hiring part-time people to fill in to do these overtime, whatever, and I can understand that. But when they start charging us for health insurance, life insurance, dental insurance, vision insurance, which those same people have already, which the same cost does not change based on where they're working at or if they're working overtime, I just don't understand why we have to pay for those benefits, or they even have the nerve to charge us for those benefits to put on this voting. So, just my comments on the record.
Councilmember Orleans, we agree with you, but they're the only game in town at the moment.
Yeah, and that's what is too bad about this, and just, I mean, this is, it's a sham. I mean, laid out, it's unrealistic.
Councilmember Price.
I was just going to suggest if Councilman Orleans would like to take this upon ourselves, we could conduct our own elections in the off years.
We have looked into that in the past, and Kay, would you give a brief summary of what we've learned?
Yes, sir. We have looked into it in the past, and the last time we looked at it, it was not cost effective for us to be able to do it with the required either purchase or leasing of equipment and hiring staff that would be necessary.
Didn't we look at Cobb too? Or
we did, if that was a possibility. We also talked with Sandy Springs, so it doesn't mean that we can't revisit things as we move forward, but at that time it was not feasible for us to do it. That's about 2 years ago.
Any further discussion before we take a vote? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Councilmember Diamond, DiPolito, that's unanimous.
The next item is approval for the mayor and/or city administrator to sign a contract with Blount Construction for parking lot paving projects in the amount of $277,402.50. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Councilmember DiPolito. This is part of our facilities condition assessment. It's a maintenance assessment that we've done on all of our facilities. We have a budget that we run every year. The paving projects have come up for this current year. Building Operations has gotten together with our Transportation Department and gone out and done the estimating for the current conditions of these properties, and Blunt Construction then came back and gave a bid. There was 8 different companies that bid. Blunt was the lowest responsible bidder of $277,402.50, and that would be our recommendation that you would approve them for the maintenance of these parking facilities.
Any questions the council may have? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilmember DiPolito. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Eichelhardt. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Councilmember Orleans.
Question for you, Mr. Fisher. The determination of these lots and so forth, was that done by our transportation, a normal process of the way they look at our roads and so forth and prioritizing them? Or was this done by the company that we hired to look into our facilities and what needed to be done? And did they use the same type of techniques on the parking lots that we do on our streets?
This is done by the company that did the facilities condition assessment. It was about 4 years ago. So we'll have an update. It's a 10-year program, so we'll have an update with that in this next coming year. They do not look at all the criteria, I think, that they would use for roads, and it is not an annual update for this program. There is a repairs that are done annually by Recreation and Parks for complaints that come in if there's potholes or things that have been created. But this program is done by a contractor that is familiar with many different facilities, and then they have expertise in looking at what the life cycle of the parking lots are, the amount of usage, and then they put that on a schedule so that we can plan ahead for the capital that we need for our maintenance.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember Price.
Really just a comment. I went out to visit the 17 sites last week, and I was a little disturbed by both the needs of the various locations compared to what was planning to be done at those locations, looking at the detailed scope of work that I believe was provided by Transportation. And I viewed these sites with people from Parks and Recreation. So we've kind of got 3 city departments involved here. The facilities maintenance being handled through administration, and then Transportation looked at the scope of work, and then the locations are all within the Department of Recreation and Parks.
Correct.
And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 of the 17 are really only getting the sealing and restriping, and some of the others are more extensive in overlay of asphalt in a couple of areas that had some tree root issues. But what struck me even more was that there were a number of areas within various parks that had areas that looked like they needed something more imminently than those that were determined to be done. And the comment was made, well, I guess they're on next year's list and not this year's. But I just thought it looked to me like there would need to be a reevaluation of which ones were on this year's program and not to delay until next year that had some significant issues. And I know when you've got 3 departments trying to coordinate together, sometimes things move ahead, perhaps without the best plan of action. And also, I did notice at a private location the other day, a place that had a cracked seal and restriping done, and I just inquired to them how much they paid to have that done, and it was $2,200 for their whole parking lot. And I'm not sure exact dimensions of it, but it was a good-sized parking lot. So that to me seemed like a pretty reasonable amount of money. I don't know that that person had bid, but I would just like to defer this for a little more investigation to make sure that we're actually getting some of the places that have greater need than some of these to be perhaps moved up on the list and attended to sooner, and maybe to look at...
Let me ask you a question before we go further.
Sure.
Is this a cost and materials in which we can adjust it within projects, or is this specific for certain projects and we would have to rebid this whole project if we change the schedule?
This is a cost of materials that is based on the needs of the parking lots that they went out and looked at.
So we could approve this tonight and ask staff to go back and review the specific priorities and change the priorities without going out to rebid this.
We can, but this project, keep in mind, this whole FCA project is a project that's built on a schedule of needs for maintenance. There may be parking lots that need some repair work done, and if it's something that is detrimental, it's going to get fixed. I mean, Rec and Parks does maintenance when they need, or does repairs when it's needed. These are facilities that need maintenance on a regular basis so they don't end up with base problems and potholes that are made. And if we start moving them around, I don't know what we're going to do to one that may just need crack seal this year. If we put it off for a couple of years, then it's going to need a deep patch in digging out and redoing. So if there's issues of ones that need to be repaired, I would suggest we would get those and repair them. But from a maintenance standpoint, I think if we keep the FCA intact, budget the money for the maintenance, do the maintenance, and then move on to the other ones that are needed later.
Thank you for that explanation. Other questions to staff before we entertain a motion? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Fisher, I guess just to help clarify some of the questions, there were several members involved from Transportation, Building Ops, Rec and Parks.
Correct.
Could you explain the process of how we determined what areas needed to be worked on? Who went out and looked at it? Did they have a report they were looking at, and then they looked at the parking lots and either concurred or changed those?
Yes.
How did that, walk us through the process so we can
The
understand.
facilities condition assessment was done, a contractor came in, and forgive me right now, I cannot think of the name of the contractor, but they came in and looked at all of our facilities, both buildings and grounds, the parking lot here at City Hall, which we resealed earlier this year. They come in, they look at that, they put it all on a schedule of maintenance. As we got ready to do these projects, the paving projects, building operations, which is in administration, handles the facilities condition assessment. They're the ones that manages it with all of the different contractors. They do not, admittedly, felt like they had the expertise in looking at the paving to make sure what we're doing is the right thing. We have a transportation department with an estimator and engineers that can do that. So at my request, we reached out to Transportation and said, will you look at these projects that are currently on this list and see what is needed? There was more extensive measures to be done at City Hall in the FCA, which was done a few years back, than what we actually ended up doing, because Transportation looked at it and said, you know what, the base is still in really good shape, the cracks just need sealed and we'll do the top coat. So based on their recommendation, we still did the maintenance, but we don't just do what's written without looking at it. And it's the same way that we do with buildings or anything else. Building operations looks at it first and determines exactly what level do we need to do. So we try not to shift from one year to the next, but we also don't try to do any more than what is necessary to get the useful life out of the project. So Transportation went out with a checklist from the facility condition explaining what is recommended to be done. They, as the experts, looked at it and said, I think we can do a top coat, I think we can do a crack seal, or I think we need to do a deep patch and do an overlay on top of it. So that's what we're bringing forth. That's what got bid, and that's what we're bringing forth tonight.
So if they went out to a parking area, if they saw other issues that were out there, did they come back and say, this area that's recommended is fine, we need to do a different area of the parking lot?
They looked at the parking lots that were on this list. Now, if there's other parking areas that have issues that need repaired, They didn't look at that specifically for this program. They may have talked to Joe, they may have talked to Jeff. I know they fix a lot of potholes based on, it's a complaint type system. When they're brought to their attention, if they need repaired, they repair them. But what we looked at was not outside of the scope of what was already in the FCA, the Facilities Condition Program.
And over how many years do we go through a cycle of maintenance for our parking lots?
10 years. This whole program is run on a 10-year. It'll renew every 5 years. So we'll have them come in, look at it again next year, which will be our year 5, and they will move, out another 5 years, and they'll refine the next 5 years, which, for lack of a better way of explaining it, was the last 5 years of the first program. Now that we're getting within a 5-year program on that, they will refine those, and then they will give us another 5 years worth of planning. So every 5 years, we're going to be renewing a 10-year program.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Other questions before we entertain a motion? Did anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Do we have a motion? Motion, we have a motion, we have a second. I apologize. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That's Councilman Orleans, Eaglehart, DiPolito, and Diamond, all opposed. Councilmember Price passes 4-1.
Thank you.
This time we'll hear from Councilmember Betty Price, liaison to the Transportation Department.
We have one item on the transportation agenda, that is the approval of a resolution to accept local maintenance and improvement grant funds with the Georgia Department of Transportation in the amount of $573,350.52, and the approval of a budget amendment BA 2204-2200-06-10-13 to establish the grant account. Colonel Asenbrack will give us the details.
Thank you, Councilmember Price. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, good evening. This is annual application that we do to the Georgia Department of Transportation to secure funding for the maintenance that we use for our collector roads. This year, based on the centerline miles and the population, our grant amount is $573,000. We applied. We always over-apply for these monies. We always send them more requirements than we know we'll have, just to make sure that we get all the money that is due to us. We submitted for these 4 roads: Nesbitt Ferry, Hembry, Hardscrabble, and Norcross. I have a little graphic here to show you the limits of those areas, and so the Georgia Department of Transportation agrees with us, and with your approval tonight, we will secure these funds and send these projects out to bid.
Do we have a motion for approval?
Just one question.
Yes, ma'am.
The Nesbitt Ferry road improvement.
Right here.
Does that abut our issue with Johns Creek?
The Brumbelow Road, it does include Brumbelow intersection. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So if we do that road, then we will do it in just the normal fashion as it is now?
That's correct.
Okay.
One comment. When we go forward on this road, I know there was a request with Nesbitt Lakes to try to put in a splitter island or some way to help improve their... they have a real problem getting in and off of that road in the morning, and they talked about the possibility of maybe looking at, while we're mobilizing to do this, to make some improvement there to help them. So if y'all could look into that.
Yes, sir, we always do.
It would be, now's the time to do it if we're going to do something.
Yes, sir.
So if there's anything we can do to help Nesbitt Lakes get in and out of their neighborhood in the morning, I'm sure this council would support it.
Yes, sir.
Any further comment before we take a vote? All in favor of the motion, raise your hands.
I don't think I made one.
Do we have a motion?
No.
Do we?
Would you like one?
We need a motion. Are you prepared to make a motion?
I am. Move to approve to accept the grant funds from GDOT in the amount of $573,350.52.
Motion by Councilmember Price. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Eichelhardt. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
I would like staff to draft a letter on my behalf to Johns Creek to say that we're pleased that we're moving forward with helping them in their transportation issues, and that we always look forward to working with Johns Creek, and we're glad to spend this money to help our citizens and theirs commute on this road, and that if they do wish to move forward with their improvement, it would be a good time to do it, because as we're mobilizing, they might be able to save some money, but if they're not ready to move forward, I very much understand that. So I thank council for supporting working with Johns Creek, our friendly neighbor. And with that, I understand we do not need to discuss in closure tonight, so the good news, we're adjourned. We just need to write really, Steve, I just want you to just layer it on.